Story 1. I spent a decade sacrificing everything to buy my dream home. My dad yelled, "We need to talk about the house." But my response shocked him. "We need to discuss the house. My name is Emma and I am 28 years old." That text arrived last month on a Saturday evening while I sat alone in my brand new living room. After 8 agonizing years of saving every penny, forgoing countless nights out and lavish trips, I finally received the keys to my dream home. As soon as I held them in my hands, I sent out invites to my entire family for a housewarming meal. I imagined laughing, warmth, and the beginning of a new chapter. I spent several days preparing. I fluffed cushions in the guest rooms, made all of their favorite foods until my kitchen smelled like home, and meticulously placed family photos, hoping to bridge the growing gap between us. But as the hours passed on Saturday, my exhilaration became into bewilderment, then bitter sadness. Not a single family member showed up. Not one. I was left sitting alone, surrounded by unopened boxes, cold food, and a quiet that shouted louder than any dispute. Then my phone vibrated with Dad's text. "You see, my story begins in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of town. My parents, George and Susan, worked many jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. Mom worked as a waitress in the mornings and cleaned offices at night. Dad worked construction and security jobs, whatever he could find. My younger siblings, Rachel and David, shared the second bedroom, and I slept on a pull-out couch in the living room until I was 18. Money was always scarce. I recall witnessing my mother stretch a single pound of ground beef into 3 distinct meals, each with more beans and less meat. My father tracked every kilowatt on the power bill. "Leave a light on in an empty room, and you'll receive the lecture. Electricity costs money we don't have," he'd moan, switching the switch with a heaviness that carried all his financial concerns. Despite this, we took our Sunday drives. Once a month, Mom would persuade Dad to borrow his brother's car, and we'd drive through the affluent neighborhoods on the other side of town. Those streets, surrounded with exquisite buildings, completely intrigued me. I'd push my face against the window, selecting out my favorites, and imagine what life may be like inside. "Check out the one with the crimson door, Mom," I'd shout, pointing to a craftsman-style home with a spacious front porch and hanging flower baskets. Mom would smile, her eyes light up. "That one is stunning, Emma." All those windows would let in a lot of natural light. However, Dad's response remained consistent. "People like us don't possess houses like that," he'd add, his knuckles becoming white on the steering wheel. "It's best not to fill your head with unattainable dreams." Those remarks stayed with me not as a discouragement, but as a burning challenge. By 15, I had persuaded the proprietor of a small diner to hire me on weekends and after school. I saved every penny, storing my profits in a lockbox beneath my pull-out bed. When my parents discovered out I was working, they wanted me to contribute to the household expenses. I did, but I still managed to save half of each paycheck for the future. High school graduation came some surprising news. Mrs. Garner, my guidance counselor, pulled me into her office on an April afternoon, virtually humming with enthusiasm. "Emma, did you check your emails today?" she asked. I had not. We couldn't afford another luxury internet access at home. When she showed me the scholarship announcement on her computer screen, I burst out crying. A complete ride to State University, which includes housing. I was going to be the first in my family to attend college. I anticipated my family to rejoice over this triumph, which marked a watershed moment. Mom hugged me firmly and whispered, "I always knew you were special." Dad nodded, a flash of pride followed by his normal realism. "College is expensive, even with scholarships. Books, materials, and living expenses. Avoid being too big for your boots." Rachel, then 15, appeared to be really delighted. David, barely 13, was too young to understand the significance. College tested me in ways I hadn't expected. The grant provided tuition and basic lodging, but little else. I worked at the university bookstore in between classes and waited tables at a nearby restaurant on weekends. Sleep became a luxury, but I maintained my grades and continued to save. The cultural transition was arguably more difficult than the financial pressure. Many of my classmates hailed from wealthy backgrounds and discussed European vacations with their parents, physicians, lawyers, and business leaders. I learned to manage conversations carefully, giving little about my background and always feeling the wide gap between our experiences. When I called home, the talks became more strained. Mom wanted to know every bit of campus life and lived vicariously via my experiences. Dad largely inquired about prices and whether my jobs interfered with my schooling. Rachel and David spoke less and less. Our shared childhood experiences were no longer sufficient to close the widening distance. Graduation day arrived after 4 rigorous years. I surveyed the audience several times, eagerly trying to spot my complete family amid the proud parents and siblings. Only Mom emerged, sitting alone in a dress I knew she had saved months for. "Where is everybody?" I asked when we would meet after the ceremony. "Your father took on an extra shift," she said. "That they are short-handed at the site." But she did not meet my eyes. Rachel had a school project due on Monday, and David was not feeling well. I nodded, swallowing my painful disappointment. We took pictures together, just the two of us with my hard-earned diploma. Later, I recognized that day established a pattern that would shape our family relations for years to come. Most of my family rarely acknowledged my successes, no matter how meaningful they were to me. Their absence at graduation was only the beginning. With my marketing degree, I secured an entry-level employment with Blake & Associates, a mid-sized marketing business in downtown. The beginning wage was not particularly high, but there was genuine room for advancement. I discovered a studio apartment 20 minutes away from the office via bus. The area was under 400 square feet, and the kitchenette was so small that I could touch opposite counters without completely reaching my arms. But it was mine, and the rent enabled me to keep saving. My financial plan was precisely planned. The paychecks were divided, 45% for necessary costs, 35% for savings set aside for a future home, and 20% for anything else, including the occasional movie or dinner out. I recorded every single dollar on a spreadsheet, watching my housing money rise gradually. "You need to live a little," my colleague Lily would say while waiving concert tickets. I would decline. "You are only young once." She wasn't wrong, but my concentration was steadfast. The remembrance of my father's statements about unachievable ambitions strengthened my resolve. I wasn't only saving for a house. I was proving something to myself and my family. Professional development occurred steadily. In my second year, I was promoted to account manager. Year 3 saw another rise to senior account manager. The accompanying wage increases were sent directly into my house fund rather than improving my living condition. On weekends and evenings, I started a side company managing social media accounts for local small businesses. What started as a single client, the florist around the block from my apartment, has grown to 8 regular accounts. This extra money accelerated my savings tremendously. However, these financial aspirations took precedence over my personal life. Friends stopped inviting me on expensive outings because they knew I'd say no. My apartment remained modestly furnished with used furniture. Vacations were non-existent. Even holidays turned into working days as I took advantage of firms that required social media coverage during breaks. In my 3rd year at the firm, I met Ethan in the elevator. He worked for the legal office 2 floors above us, and his smile shone against his dark blue suit as he inquired about the stack of social media strategy documents I was holding. Our romance progressed slowly. Coffee dates progressed to supper, movies, and then weekend getaways. Initially, he was understanding of my schedule and supportive of my aspirations. 7 months in, he recommended that we move in together to save money on rent. "We could get a nicer house for less than we're spending individually," he reasoned. "You'd get to your house fund goal much faster." The rationale was clear, yet something kept me back. Perhaps it was dread of combining my carefully managed financial world with someone else's, or concern that my savings discipline might deteriorate with a companion. Whatever the reason, I declined and Ethan accepted my decision graciously. For years into our partnership, however, cracks began to appear. Ethan started referring to my saving practices as an obsession. Arguments occurred when I denied invites to friends' vacation weddings and refused to spend money on experiences he valued. There's more to life than preparing for a future that might never come, he stated during our final struggle. You're missing everything that's happening right now. The split was sad, but it also provided clarity. I realized I was unwilling to compromise on my goal, even for love. The house symbolized something more than tangible property. It was solid proof that individuals like us could accomplish what my father thought was impossible. My family's reactions to my professional development were complex. Mom was genuinely proud of my professional accomplishments, but she appeared increasingly uncomfortable during her few trips to my apartments. This neighborhood is so different from ours, she'd say, looking uneasily at the young professionals entering the coffee shop under my second flat. Dad refused to visit at all. Downtown is too fancy for me, he'd respond when invited. Too many one-way streets and no place to park. My connection with my siblings also changed. David, like Dad, was now working infrequently in construction and only contacted when he needed money. My offers of assistance with budgeting and job applications were treated with defensiveness. Not everyone wants to work themselves to death for some American dream fantasy, he exclaimed when I offered a trade certification program. Rachel married her high school lover at a young age and had 2 children quickly. Our chats focused on her children with little interest shown in my life. When I revealed my rising house fund following a particularly successful quarter in my side business, she immediately shifted the subject. During a client meeting 9 years into my work, I had a revelation. The CEO of a local firm revealed that she bought her first investment property at age 32. The perfect time to build wealth is when you have income, but before you have major family obligations. Her tone was casual. At 30, I recognized that my timetable may be hastened. My savings, together with my good credit score and consistent income from both my major work and side company, placed me on track to acquire a home 2 years earlier than intended. That evening, I contacted a mortgage broker to schedule a preliminary consultation. The appointment with my mortgage broker, Oliver, reinforced my suspicions. 8 years of rigorous saving and work advancement had prepared me extremely well for home ownership. My pre-approval amount exceeded my expectations, but I stayed determined to stay below the maximum to keep financial flexibility. You've done the hard part already, Oliver remarked, looking over my perfect credit and significant down payment. Most first-time buyers struggle with the saving phase. You're in an enviable position. His words justified years of sacrifices, all those canceled invitations and bare furnishings in my series of small apartments. The next step was to find a real estate agent. Through a business connection, I met Claire, a straightforward agent who specializes in first-time buyers. Our initial chats established clear parameters: craftsman or colonial design, at least 3 bedrooms for family visits and a home office, a well-established neighborhood with character and a manageable commute to downtown. I've been visualizing this house for 10 years, I told Claire. I'll know it when I see it, but these are my non-negotiables. The house hunting experience was more emotionally exhausting than expected. Over the course of 2 months, we viewed 40 properties. Some were close to my vision, yet contained catastrophic flaws. Water issues hidden beneath fresh paint, antiquated electrical systems that would necessitate costly upgrades, or places that would add an hour to my daily drive. By property 30, exhaustion had set in. Maybe I'm being too picky, I said to Claire, leaving an almost beautiful colonial with a faulty foundation. Maybe I should adjust my expectations. The right house is worth waiting for, Claire informed me, especially for someone as patient and purposeful as you. Property 35 changed everything. Driving down a tree-lined street in the historic Oakwood district, I noticed it before Claire even paused. A craftsman home featuring a spacious front porch, antique woodwork, and a red door. My heart raced as we parked. This looks promising, Claire commented, taking note of my expression. The interior surpassed my expectations. Original hardwood flooring throughout with built-in bookshelves flanking a brick fireplace. A remodeled kitchen that preserved the home's heritage while providing modern utility. Upstairs, 3 bedrooms with angled ceilings and dormer windows provided ideal accommodations for guests and a home office. Standing in the master bedroom with sunlight streaming through mullion windows onto wide hardwood floors, I experienced an unexpected surge of emotion. "This is it," I said, running my palm across the century-old doorframe. "This feels like coming home to a place I've never been before." Claire nodded, realizing the gravity of the situation. "The asking price is at the top of your range, but given the location and condition, it's reasonable. If you're serious, we should act immediately." We submitted an offer at the asking price with a personal letter to the owners explaining why their house would be the ideal first home for a first-generation home buyer. I barely slept that night, running numbers and visualizing my furniture in those sunlit rooms. And by the morning, I had made my decision. After receiving 3 other offers, one of which was even higher than the asking price, I threw myself into work, trying not to check my phone every 10 minutes for news from Claire. For days later, my offer was accepted. The owners, an elderly couple who were downsizing to be closer to their grandchildren, were moved by my letter. They preferred my offer over the higher competing bid because they wanted their cherished property to go to someone who would appreciate its character. The financing process introduced unforeseen problems. My self-employment income from the side business, while substantial, posed verification challenges. The underwriter sought extra verification, which pushed the closing date back by 3 weeks. "This is usual for self-employed borrowers," Oliver informed me. "Your finances are sound. It's just a matter of properly documenting everything." Those 3 weeks seemed forever, and a competitive buyer remained interested, ready to step in if my finance fell through. I submitted tax returns, profit and loss statements, and client contracts, assembling a comprehensive financial portrait to satisfy the underwriter. Finally, approval came through, and closing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I signed numerous documents, initialed dozens of pages, and received the keys to my first home. The moment felt surreal, the culmination of a journey that began with those Sunday drives through neighborhoods just like this one. After the closing, I asked for time alone in the empty house, walking from room to room, allowing the significance to sink in. In the living room, I sat on the floor and cried, tears of accomplishment, relief, and vindication. The daughter of tenants who couldn't afford to leave lights on now owns a piece of the American dream that had been so totally unattainable. Taking images of each room, I produced a family group text, something I rarely did. "Just closed on my first house. I can't wait for you all to come and help Christian it properly. I'm thinking of throwing a family dinner 3 weeks from Saturday once I'm situated. Save the date." The comments came in slowly. Mom sent a congratulations. Rachel responded with a thumbs-up emoji. David didn't respond at all. And Dad eventually said, "Houses like that have high upkeep costs. I hope you budgeted for repairs." The lackluster response stung, but it didn't reduce my success. Standing in what would become my bedroom, watching the sunset light paint the walls amber, I promised myself that this house would become a home full of warmth and welcome, regardless of whether my family could join in my joy. The 2 weeks between closing and my planned family gathering flew by in a whirlwind of activity. I arranged for my meager apartment furnishings to be moved quickly, realizing how inadequate they looked in the larger space. The living room sofa, which had dominated my apartment, barely filled a corner of the new space. My dining table for 2 seemed lost in the proper dining room. I reminded myself to take it 1 room at a time, prioritizing essential spaces. I found a second-hand dining table that could seat 8, perfect for the family dinner I was planning. A quick coat of paint refreshed it, and new chairs from a budget-friendly store completed the set. With the basics in place, I focused on preparing for my family's first visit. I splurged on a new mattress and quality bedding for my parents' guest room, knowing that Dad's back problems frequently made sleeping away from home difficult. This wasn't just about showing off my new home. It was also an opportunity to reconnect and bridge the growing distance between us. Perhaps seeing my success in person would help them understand my choices and sacrifices. The second bedroom was set up for Rachel, her husband Mark, and their children, with an air mattress set up alongside the queen bed. And the small third bedroom, which would eventually become my home office, would accommodate David. When I went grocery shopping, I filled my cart with ingredients for everyone's favorite dishes, including Dad's favorite pot roast with carrots and potatoes, Mom's fondness for blueberry cobbler, Rachel's fondness for Caesar salad, and David's fondness for buffalo chicken dip as an appetizer. The bill at checkout made me wince, but this celebration warranted the expense. Throughout the house, I created thoughtful touches such as a photo wall in the hallway displaying family photos from decades. Mom and Dad on their wedding day, Rachel and David as toddlers playing in a kiddie pool, all four of us on a rare beach vacation when I was 12. Welcome baskets greeted each family member. Recent images were glaringly absent, which I hoped would change with this visit. For Mom, a gardening book and seed packets for the backyard plot we could plan together. For Dad, a custom keychain with the house address symbolizing his welcome anytime. For Rachel's kids, age-appropriate books and coloring supplies. For David, a local brewery gift card for the tour I thought we might take together. I sent formal invitations with detailed directions, parking information, and a warm note expressing how meaningful they were. Mom called and asked what she could bring. I assured her that everything else was taken care of. Rachel texted that Mark had scheduled time off work and they were excited to see the new place. David responded with a brief, "I'll be there," which lifted my spirits. Dad remained silent, but Mom assured me they would drive together. The shift began 5 days before the dinner with Rachel calling first. "Emma, I'm so sorry, but Emma has come down with an ear infection. The pediatrician advises her against traveling this weekend. Could Mark stay with Emma while you and Jack arrive?" I suggested, hoping to salvage some of the visit. "Mark's mother was counting on us visiting her on Sunday, so he needs to take Jack there while I stay with Emma," she explained, her excuse becoming more complicated. "We'll definitely come another weekend once everyone's healthy." I accepted her explanation, disappointment settling in my stomach. That evening, David texted, "Boss just scheduled me for Saturday. Someone has called out and I need the hours." David rarely took on extra shifts and constantly complained about his manager's last-minute scheduling. Still, challenging him would only add to the tension, so I responded with understanding and an offer to reschedule. Thursday brought Mom's call, the one I'd been dreading after my siblings established the pattern. "Your father's back is acting up something terrible," she began, her voice carrying familiar notes of apology. "He can hardly get from the bedroom to the kitchen today. There's no way he could sit in the car for an hour each way. I could come pick you up?" I offered, desperation edging into my voice. "Or just you could come and we could FaceTime Dad during dinner." "You know he wouldn't want me traveling alone," she replied. "And he'd feel terrible being left out completely." By Friday afternoon, my family dinner for 5 had dwindled to a party of 1. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by groceries for meals no one would eat, staring at the dining table set with new plates and carefully folded napkins. The house that had felt so full of potential now echoed with emptiness. I tried calling each family member, offering alternative dates, different arrangements, anything to salvage the gathering. Voicemails and unanswered texts multiplied. Only Mom responded, reiterating Dad's health concerns and promising they'd visit soon. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, the spring sunshine seeming to mock my solitude. The welcome baskets sat untouched on unslept-in guest beds. I moved mechanically through the day, putting away perishable groceries and covering prepared dishes with plastic wrap. By the afternoon, I gave up pretense and changed from my carefully selected outfit back into comfortable jeans and a t-shirt. Sitting down on the living room floor, surrounded by still unpacked boxes, I began the work of organizing books and kitchenware, trying to focus on the physical task rather than the emotional weight pressing against my chest. The house that was supposed to be filled with family laughter remained quiet except for the occasional ping of my phone, work emails, and social media notifications, but nothing from my family. The silence from them spoke volumes, especially from Dad, who had not directly acknowledged my invitation or expressed his regrets. As the evening approached, I ordered a pizza because I didn't want to cook any of the special meals planned. Sitting cross-legged on the floor among half-unpacked boxes, I scrolled through design websites on my tablet, forcing myself to focus on future plans rather than present disappointment. That's when Dad's text message arrived, causing my heart to leap with momentary hope. "We need to talk about the house," it said. My fingers paused over the phone screen, pizza forgotten beside me. Dad rarely texted, preferring brief phone calls or having Mom relay messages. There were no congratulations or apologies for missing supper, only 7 words that held an unsettling weight. Despite the late hour, I called right away, my heart beating. He answered on the second ring, his brusque greeting devoid of warmth. "Dad, I received your text. Is everything okay?" I inquired, attempting to maintain a calm tone despite the growing worry in my chest. "Your mother is upset," he began abruptly. "She has been crying on and off since you sent those house pictures." Confusion rushed over me. "Crying? Why? Is she okay?" "No, Emma. She's not okay." His voice hardened. "None of us are okay with the show you're putting on." I echoed, perplexed. "What are you talking about?" "This magnificent property in that upscale area. The dinner invitation makes you feel like a hostess from those magazines your mother used to read. It is not you, Emma. At least not the you we raised." The accusation landed like a physical blow. I sank back against an unopened box, struggling to process his words. "Dad, I've worked for this house for years. I saved every dime and worked many jobs. This isn't a show. It's the result of 8 years of hard work." He scoffed. "Is that what you call it when you abandon your family? When do you quit attending Sunday dinners because you are too busy with your office job and side hustle? When you move to communities where your father is uncomfortable visiting?" Each question grew in volume until he was almost shouting. In the background, I could hear Mom's muffled voice asking him to calm down. "I never turned my back on anyone," I protested, raising my voice to match his passion. "I invited everyone here this weekend. I've arranged rooms for every one of you. I cooked all your favorite foods. Because we don't belong in a house like that," he exploded. "Your mother saw those hardwood floors and fancy kitchen and knew she'd be afraid to touch anything. David said he felt sick after seeing those photographs, knowing he'd never be able to purchase anything close to that on construction pay. Rachel also felt it. Said you were showing off, making it apparent how far you'd progressed beyond us." Tears welled up in my eyes. His comments wounded harder than he could have imagined. "I wanted to share this with you without making anyone feel awful." "Well, you failed," he stated flatly. "Your mother believes you're embarrassed by where you came from, that you bought this house to escape your roots, to escape us." "That's not true," I whispered, though doubt began to creep in. Had I unconsciously chosen a neighborhood so different from my childhood home as a form of rejection? "Isn't it?" Dad continued. "When was the last time you brought any of those work pals to meet us? When was the last time you talked about your family at that fancy office? Do your coworkers even know your father works in construction and your mother cleans houses?" The inquiries touched nerves I had no idea were exposed. I had compartmentalized my life, keeping my background separate from my professional world, not out of shame, but out of a desire to be judged on my own merits rather than my origins. "I'm proud of where I came from," I insisted, my voice breaking. "Everything I've accomplished is due to what you and Mom taught me about work ethic and perseverance." "Save it," Dad said. "Actions speak louder than words, and your actions indicate that you're creating a life that excludes us. This house is just the ultimate proof." Mom's voice grew louder in the background, and Dad may have partially covered the phone as their conversation became muted. When he returned, his tone had changed from angry to resigned. "Your mother wants me to tell you that she loves you no matter what," he said mechanically. "But I need to be honest with you, Emma. This alters things between us. You constantly bragging about your accomplishment, making the rest of us feel small. There will be consequences for our connection," I continued, my tone tinged with disbelief. "Are you really threatening to cut me off because I bought a house? Because I succeeded? Call it what you want," he replied coldly. "Just remember that choices have repercussions. Always have." The phone abruptly terminated, leaving me astonished in silence. I moved through the rooms in a daze, touching the walls, door frames, and countertops that had brought me so much joy just days before. The pizza congealed in its box, forgotten, and the emptiness of the house felt oppressive rather than peaceful. Each room was a testament to what I had supposedly chosen over my family. My father's accusations had tainted each beautiful feature, and the guest rooms mocked me with their emptiness, the welcome baskets pathetic in their optimism. In the master bedroom, I caught my reflection in the mirror, wearing designer jeans and a casual top that cost more than my father probably spent on clothing in a year. When had that happened? When had I started spending $90 on shirts without blinking? When I grew up watching my mother darn socks rather than replace them? Had success changed me in ways I hadn't realized? Had I, in my determination to rise above financial hardship, inadvertently elevated myself away from the people who had shaped me? These questions circled like vultures as I sank onto the edge of my bed. My family's eyes were swollen from tears by dawn, but my mind had achieved a clarity that had been missing. The night stretched out before me, a dark canvas for painful self-examination. Sleep evaded me completely as I replayed years of interactions, searching for the moment when advancement became alienation in their eyes. The house wasn't the problem, nor was my success. The real problem was deeper, rooted in complex family dynamics and expectations that I had both fulfilled and defied. Morning light filtered through curtainless windows, casting long shadows across my bedroom floor. My night of painful reflection had crystallized something important. I could not control my family's reactions, but I could control my own. After a shower and coffee, I sat at my new dining table with my laptop open. The words didn't come easily, but they came honestly. I drafted, deleted, and redrafted my response several times. This wasn't just a response to Dad's accusations. It was a proclamation of limits I should have established years ago. The final text was lengthier than I usually wrote, but each word felt vital. Dad, Mom, Rachel, and David, I started. I'd spent the night thinking about our conversation and the thoughts underlying your absence yesterday. This is difficult to write, but I need you to hear me. First and foremost, I love you all deeply. Nothing about my career path or this house purchase changes that. You are my roots, my foundation, and the work ethic that built this life came directly from watching Dad work double shifts and Mom juggle multiple jobs. Every sacrifice you made for us kids taught me the value of perseverance. When I look at this house, I don't see an escape from my past. I see the physical manifestation of the lessons you taught me. I won't apologize for working hard and achieving goals. I won't pretend I haven't earned this to soothe feelings of inadequacy that I never created or intended. But loving you doesn't imply that I have to diminish myself to make you happy. Most importantly, I will not sell this house or downplay my accomplishments in order to maintain relationships that should be strengthened rather than threatened by my success. The door to this home will always be open to each of you whenever you are ready to walk through it without resentment or judgment. And I have designed spaces specifically for you. A guest room with a firm mattress Dad needs for his back. A backyard where Mom and I could garden together. Space for Rachel's kids to play, and local breweries I thought David might enjoy exploring with me. I'm not choosing this house over family, and I believe we can grow together rather than apart. I'm choosing to believe that love isn't diminished by square footage or mortgage payments. This door will always be open to you, but I won't close it on my dreams. I hope someday you'll understand that my success honors rather than rejects everything you've given me. I love you always, Emma. My finger hovered over the send button for several minutes. I pressed send and set my phone aside, deliberately turning my attention to unpacking books onto the built-in shelves. The responses came in stages, each revealing something about my relationships. Mom called first, her voice thick with tears. I never meant to make you feel bad about your accomplishments, she began. I am proud of you, Emma. Always have been. It's just difficult to see you construct a life so different from what I could provide. You provided everything that mattered, Mom, I replied gently. Love, morals, strength. The rest is just stuff. Our chat lasted over an hour, and it was the first completely honest session we'd had in years. She confessed to being terrified by my work and financial security, admitting that my father's reaction originated partly from his own sense of failure. He wanted so much more for us than what he could achieve, she revealed. It's complicated for him. I accept this, but I need him to understand that my success is also his success. Everything I am began with you both. We finished the phone with preliminary preparations for her to visit alone. Rachel texted the next weekend, her message unexpectedly vulnerable. I lied about Emma being sick. To be honest, I was jealous and ashamed. Mark and I can barely pay our apartment rent, and seeing your lovely home made me feel like a failure. I am sorry. Your message caused me to cry. Could we start over? I called her right away, and our conversation revealed years of competitive feelings I'd never recognized. As the older sister who appeared to do everything right, I represented a standard she felt she couldn't meet. My achievements had unknowingly become a measuring rod against which she assessed her own life choices. I've never thought less of your choices, I told her. You have lovely children and a loving marriage. Those are accomplishments that cannot be quantified in dollars or property deeds. We concluded the call with plans for a proper visit the following month once she had worked through some of her complex emotions. David remained radio silent for 5 days before sending a brusque, "Need time to process. Not ready to talk yet." It was the most honest communication we'd had in years, and I respected his limit without asking for more. Dad's response was the most difficult. A week passed with no word until a birthday card arrived in the mail with a gift card to a home improvement store. Despite the fact that there was no accompanying note, the choice of gift acknowledged my new homeowner status, a small, almost imperceptible step toward acceptance. The weeks that followed were a mix of sadness and liberation. I missed the easy family relationships I'd once taken for granted, but there was also relief in no longer maintaining the illusion that everything was fine between us. I threw myself into making the house truly mine, painting walls, arranging and rearranging furniture, installing window treatments, and making decisions based on my preferences and needs rather than what others might think, which felt like a breath of fresh air. When a colleague inquired about my weekend plans, and I mentioned refurbishing the guest bathroom, she casually asked, "Will your family come to view the improvements for the first time?" I replied without deflection or sugarcoating, "We're dealing with some tough thoughts regarding my move." Her knowing nod and shared story of similar struggles with her own relatives made me realize how universal these experiences were. The pretense of perfect family harmony I'd maintained had only isolated me further. And this realization sparked another important decision. I joined a networking group for first-generation professionals to connect with others navigating the complicated territory between their roots and their achievements. Their stories of similar family tensions helped me understand that I wasn't alone in these struggles. After I received my doctorate, my father did not speak to me for 3 years, one person shared. The most significant shift in my thinking came from therapy, which I began 6 months after the failed family gathering. Maria, a professor who lived 3 doors down, had an 8th-grade education and saw my degree as a criticism of him. Took some time, but he eventually came around. Weekly sessions helped me untangle complex emotions around success, family loyalty, and identity. Your achievement doesn't diminish anyone else's worth, my therapist emphasized during a particularly difficult session. And their discomfort with your success isn't something you need to fix by becoming smaller. This perspective freed me from the guilt that had hampered my achievements. I began openly celebrating milestones such as a major promotion at work and the completion of the front porch restoration without first considering how my family would perceive these accomplishments. 10 months after moving in, Dad sent an unexpected text message. "Your mother says the gutters need cleaning before winter. Do you have someone handling that?" The message contained no warmth, no personal connection, yet it represented something monumental. Concern for my home's maintenance, acknowledgement of its importance, and perhaps an oblique offering of practical knowledge. "I got quotes, but haven't scheduled anyone yet," I replied carefully. "Any recommendations?" He responded unexpectedly swiftly. "These firms overcharge. I could take a look next weekend if you want." My hands trembled slightly as I typed my acceptance. When I contacted Mom to check, she revealed Dad had been thinking about this offer for weeks, summoning up the nerve to extend this olive branch in the only manner he knew how. The following Saturday, my father's truck appeared in my driveway. Dressed in work clothes, he nodded curtly as if he were arriving for any ordinary job rather than his first visit to his daughter's home. Mom accompanied him, her nervous smile revealing the significance of the moment. "Nice place," he offered gruffly, assessing the exterior with professional detachment. "They don't build them like this anymore." In the backyard, Dad examined the gutters while I held the ladder, and Mom's fingers trailed across the kitchen countertops she'd only seen in photographs. I gave them the tour I'd planned 9 months earlier, and I noticed Dad's eyes widened slightly at the craftsmanship of the original woodwork. The familiar routine of working alongside him, passing tools, and following directions bridged some of the gap between us. "You did good, Emma," he said quietly as we packed up his tools. Not, "I'm proud of you" or "I'm sorry," but an acknowledgement of my accomplishment that cost him something to give. I accepted it for the monumental concession it represented. That evening, sitting on my porch swing, watching the sunset paint my garden in golden light, I reflected on the complex journey of the previous year. The house that had initially appeared to fracture my family connections now offered a different kind of foundation. One where meaningful relationships could potentially be restored brick by brick. I recognized that home wasn't just about the physical space or the financial achievement it represented. It was about creating a sanctuary where I could be my authentic self while keeping doors open to those who shaped me. My family's acceptance journey is still in progress, full of tentative steps and unspoken truths. Some wounds would take years to fully heal, if they ever did, and the path forward would not be easy or straightforward. But for the first time, I feel like I'm building a home, not just for myself, but for the possibility of a future where my roots and wings can coexist. This house, this dream, isn't just a place I live. It's a testament to every sacrifice, every challenge, and the unwavering belief that you can build the life you want, even if those you care about struggle to see it with you. Now on to the next story. Story 2. My sister dated a dangerous man and said I overreacted when he hurt someone. Then she moved in with him in 4 months and ended up in trouble. I, 24, female, have a sister, 27, female, who has a terrible track record with boyfriends. My family has seen her get hurt by one loser after another, and it's honestly exhausting. To give you an idea, her past 3 relationships were all pretty bad. One guy cheated on her and even stole money from her. The next one would constantly belittle her and mooch off her. The most recent ex actually got physical with her once during an argument. So yeah, not a great history. We've tried to be supportive through all of this, but it's hard not to be protective at this point. Now she has a new boyfriend. Let's call him Patrick, 30, male. They've been dating for a couple of months, and she introduced him to us recently. Right off the bat, I got a weird vibe from him. He's creepy in a way that's hard to pin down at first. Like, the very first time I met him, he leaned in way too close and sniffed my hair. He sniffed my freaking hair without permission. I kind of jumped back confused and gave him a "what the hell" look. He just grinned and said something like, "Oh, sorry. Your shampoo smelled good." It was awkward as hell. I told my sister later that it made me uncomfortable and she brushed it off, saying that's just his sense of humor and that he's socially awkward but doesn't mean any harm. I wasn't convinced, but I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt for her sake. Fast forward to last weekend. We had a family dinner at our parents' house and my sister brought Patrick along. For context, I currently have a broken index finger on my right hand that's in a splint. I fractured it a couple of weeks ago doing something clumsy, tripped while jogging. Long story. It's pretty obvious I have an injury. My 2 fingers are taped together and the splint is big and bright blue, so everyone is aware to be gentle with my hand. At dinner, Patrick was sitting across from me. Out of nowhere, he reaches over the table and smacks my broken finger. It wasn't an accident. He literally smirked, reached out, and flicked my injured finger hard. I immediately yelped in pain. It hurt like hell, and I instinctively shouted, "What is wrong with you?" I might have dropped an F-bomb. I was in a lot of pain and shock. Patrick just laughed and said, "Relax, it's a joke." The room went dead silent. My dad looked like he was about to kick Patrick out then and there. I was on the verge of completely losing it. My sister jumped to Patrick's defense, putting her hand on his arm as if we were the ones attacking him. She said something like, "He didn't mean it like that. It's just his humor. You guys are overreacting." Meanwhile, I'm cradling my hand in agony, yelling that it's not funny to hit someone's injury. I told Patrick to get the hell away from me and that if he ever touched me again, we'd have a bigger problem. I admit I was furious and dropped a couple of loud F-bombs at him. My sister started yelling at me, saying I'm being dramatic and rude to her boyfriend. Patrick kept kind of chuckling like it was all no big deal, which made me even more furious. My dad finally told Patrick very sternly that he should apologize or leave. Patrick rolled his eyes and went, "Sorry, your finger is so sensitive," in the most sarcastic tone. At that point, I was done. I told my sister her boyfriend is a goddamn creep. She got very angry at that and said I was being judgmental. She actually left the house with Patrick in tow, still fuming that we humiliated him. Later that night, my sister sent a text in our family group chat, basically scolding us for not accepting Patrick. She said, "We all are being unfair, that we intentionally made the evening uncomfortable for him. I guess because we didn't find his jokes funny." She ended by saying, "If we don't give Patrick a chance and welcome him, she'll cut us off and we'll never see her again. She's essentially choosing this guy over family right now." I was and still am kind of shocked. I don't want to lose my sister, but I also refuse to pretend Patrick's behavior is okay. I've tried talking to her since that text, but she accuses me of trying to sabotage her happiness and being biased by her past relationships. Maybe I am biased because I've seen this pattern before and I hate it. But am I crazy here? I feel like any normal person would find what he did extremely creepy and cruel. Yet, she's making me out to be the bad guy for calling him out. I honestly don't know if I handled it the best way or if I'm being too harsh because of her history. So, Reddit, am I the for not accepting my sister's boyfriend and calling him out for his creepy behavior? Update 1. Hey everyone, I want to address a couple of common questions and comments I saw. Did Patrick know my finger was broken? Yes, absolutely. My whole hand is in a splint brace. It's super obvious. Everyone at dinner knew I'd injured it. He even joked about my lobster claw hand when he first saw it, which I didn't mention before. So he 100% knew it was broken. That was kind of the point of his joke. Was he drunk or something? No, he wasn't drunk or on anything as far as I could tell. We had maybe 1 glass of wine each at dinner. He seemed sober. He was just being an ass sober. Has he done stuff like this to anyone else? I honestly don't know him well enough to say. That dinner was only the second time I'd ever met Patrick. The first time was the hair sniff incident. My parents met him for the first time that night. No one else mentioned him doing anything creepy to them that evening. But then again, we were all kind of focused on the finger situation. Also, a few people suggested I might have overreacted by cussing him out in front of everyone. A couple of people even gave me an ESH, everyone sucks here, judgment for that. Look, I generally agree that losing your cool and swearing at someone at a family dinner isn't ideal. But I'll be honest, in that moment, I was in a lot of pain and just seeing red. Maybe I could have handled it more calmly, but I'm not going to beat myself up for having a human reaction when someone flicked my broken bone on purpose. Update 2. All right, I met up with my sister for coffee this morning. I wish I had better news, but the conversation was not great. I tried to take the approach many of you recommended, staying calm, focusing on how I care about her, but she was defensive pretty much from the get-go. She showed up looking pretty on edge. No small talk or anything. As soon as we sat down, it was basically, "So, what do you want to say?" in a stiff tone. I gently told her I was worried about how things went down at dinner and that I wanted to hear her side and also explain mine without us yelling. I even said, "I know you really like Patrick and I'm not trying to attack you or him. I just want us to understand each other." She immediately doubled down that I completely overreacted to Patrick's joke. According to her, I embarrassed him in front of everyone for no reason. I countered that he literally hurt me. She said he barely tapped my finger and that I screamed at him and cursed him out over nothing. She also said me calling him a creep and an a-hole was uncalled for and that I owe him an apology for that outburst. I explained that from my perspective, what he did felt very intentional and it really hurt. I described how it felt like he was mocking my injury on purpose. Her response: "He just didn't realize it would hurt that much. He was trying to lighten the mood." She kept repeating that it was just his sense of humor and that he has a different way of joking that takes time to get used to. I then brought up the hair-sniffing incident. I said, "Look, even before the finger thing, I was uncomfortable when he sniffed my hair. That wasn't normal to me." She rolled her eyes and said I was making a big deal out of that, too. She actually laughed and said, "Oh my God, he was obviously joking around. He even told you your shampoo smelled nice. Why are you so weird about it?" I replied that normal guys don't go around sniffing people's hair or touching broken fingers for laughs. I told her frankly it comes off as creepy whether he means it as a joke or not. At this point, her face shut down and she got more angry. She told me I'm just biased against Patrick because of her exes. She said, "You've never given any of my boyfriends a fair chance. The second something small happens, you all jump down their throats." That stung. I told her we only started jumping on her exes after they proved to be bad, cheating, abusing, etc. It's not like we set out to vilify them for no reason. I said, "We're worried because we've seen some red flags with Patrick already, and you defending this stuff is scary to me." She then said, "The only reason things become red flags is because you guys never actually accept anyone. You're all just waiting for a guy to mess up so you can say, 'See, told you so.'" That frustrated me because it's not true. We want her to be happy. We just don't want her to get hurt. It sounds like Patrick has been feeding her his version of events. She claimed that Patrick felt ambushed at dinner. She said I was looking at him with a weird face even before anything happened. I honestly wasn't. I was pretty neutral until he hurt me. She also said Patrick told her he could tell you all hated him from the start. He was nervous and trying to lighten the mood, but you were all so cold. So, basically, he's making himself out to be the victim of our hostility. She even mentioned that Patrick wasn't thrilled about her meeting me today. She said he thinks all I'm going to do is trash him and try to turn her against him. I told her that's not my intention at all. I'm genuinely concerned and want her to be safe and happy. I said, "If a guy is a good guy, none of us would have any reason to turn you against him." We went in circles for almost an hour. I did apologize to her for the dinner drama, but I told her I'm not sorry for how I reacted to him hurting me. He owes me an apology, not the other way around. She didn't take that well. She kept pushing that I should have just laughed it off since she has no problem with his sense of humor. She said, "If you want to stay in my life, you need to get along with Patrick. I really want you to like him." I said, "I tried to give him a chance, but he made it pretty damn hard." In the end, she basically gave me a repeat of the ultimatum. Accept Patrick and stop attacking him or she's done with us. There was no hug, no nice goodbye. She just said, "I really hope you can come around on this," and left in a hurry. Update 3. It's been a few weeks since my last update, and unfortunately, things have only gotten more worrying. My sister has essentially gone full throttle with Patrick. About 2 weeks ago, she informed us that she's moving in with him. Mind you, they've only been together for like 3 or 4 months. Even in her past relationships, I don't remember her moving this fast. She didn't really ask for anyone's input or help. She just announced it via text. "Just wanted you all to know I'm moving in with Patrick. We're really happy and this just feels right. Hope you guys can be happy for me." Caught my parents completely off guard. We all felt uneasy about it. But what can we do? She's an adult. If we protested, it would just push her further away. Since she moved in, my sister has been almost completely MIA from our lives. She rarely texts or calls anymore. Our small family group chat, which used to be active daily, now barely gets a response from her. The other day was our dad's birthday. We had a small get-together planned, just family. She didn't show up. She sent a text that morning saying, "Sorry, can't make it. Tell Dad happy birthday for me," claiming she had plans with Patrick. My dad was really hurt. I also heard from her best friend, who reached out asking if my sister was okay. Apparently, my sister has ghosted her friends, too. M said that ever since Patrick came along, my sister has been canceling plans and barely replying to messages. They're all worried. M also noticed that when they did hang out early on, Patrick was always there, glued to her side. If my sister talked to anyone else, he'd hover and even put his arm around her in a possessive way. We don't know Patrick's full background, which makes this more unsettling. I searched his last name online, nothing obvious criminal-wise, but his behavior is enough of a red flag. My mom called my sister to say we're worried about how she's cut everyone off. My sister got annoyed, saying, "I'm fine. Patrick and I are doing great. Why can't you all just be happy for me?" She implied that we made her uncomfortable at family events by being cold to Patrick. At this point, it feels like we're watching a slow-motion train wreck. She's isolating herself with this guy, and we don't even know their exact address. Communication is minimal. Update 4. This is the update I hoped I'd never have to write. A few nights ago, around midnight, my phone rang. It was my sister. She almost never calls me out of the blue, especially not that late. I picked up. She was whispering, terrified, asking, "Can you come get me, please?" I threw on clothes and headed out. She told me she was at a 24-hour gas station about 20 minutes away without her car, keys, or wallet. I called my parents on the way, and my dad insisted on coming. We found her sitting on the curb outside the gas station, no coat, hugging herself. She jumped into the car and broke down crying. At my parents' house, she told us what happened. Patrick had blown up after my mom's call that day. He accused her of siding with us, yelled in her face, punched a hole in the bedroom door, and grabbed her arm when she tried to leave. I saw the bruises. She ran out wearing his sneakers. She blocked his number after he spammed her with alternating angry and apologetic texts. We took pictures of the bruises just in case. Right now, she's staying in her old bedroom at our parents' place. She's not ready to go to the police yet, but we're focusing on making her feel safe and supported. Update 5. It's been about a week since the incident, and I'm happy to say my sister is safe and not going back to Patrick. Patrick tried calling from other numbers, sent emails blaming us, then apologizing. 2 days after she left him, he showed up at our parents' house, agitated and wanting to talk. My dad told him to leave or we'd call the police. We reported the incident to have it on record. Since then, Patrick has gone quiet. My sister went back with my dad and friends during the day to get her belongings. She's agreed to see a therapist next week to work on healing and breaking her pattern of bad relationships. Her friends have rallied around her, inviting her out and reminding her she's loved. None of us have said, "I told you so." The important thing is she's away from that toxic situation. Now on to the next story. Story 3. When my childhood friend Liam first awakened his werewolf nature, one of his buddies called me to help calm his symptoms. But Liam didn't want to give me the satisfaction. We werewolves are the most loyal in love. The first person we mark becomes our soulmate for life. Even if Arya begs to help me when she arrives, I'll have to resist. But no matter how long he waited, I never showed up. He didn't know that his brother's bodyguard had been bombarding my phone. "Miss Arya, the young master has considered you his only partner for a long time. Could you come give him a kiss?" he pleaded. It turns out that 5 years ago, when I suffered a fatal skiing accident and fell into a ravine, his brother saved me by marking me and sharing half of his werewolf life, snatching me from the jaws of death. That same night, I wrapped my arms around his brother's neck and whispered, "Declan, don't hold back. Tell me, how many years have you been secretly in love with me?" Liam's entire family carried the lycanthropy. When they turned 20, they went into heat during each full moon. The first person they marked became their lifelong companion. I thought the person Liam would want to mark was undoubtedly me. But when his werewolf nature awakened, his friend called me to relieve his symptoms. Instead, I heard Liam grumbling outside the private room. "I don't want to give Arya the satisfaction. I want to win over the campus beauty, but she's not easy. Unlike Arya, who's like an eager puppy, always ready when I call. When she arrives, even if she begs to help me, I'll have to resist. I don't want to sleep with her and end up tied to her for life, completely under her command." Standing outside the room, I went blank. I never imagined that Liam, who grew up with me, would see me this way. His friends, always ready to jump on the bandwagon, burst into laughter. "So for you, she's just a toy. Why don't I call her and tell her not to come? That way, we prevent her from taking advantage of you tonight and trying to climb the social ladder through your bed." "Honestly, I think you reap what you sow," one said. But Liam uncomfortably stopped his friend. Leave it. If we tell her not to come now, what will she think? Even if she's just entertainment, she's the girl I've indulged since childhood. My heart can't bear to hurt her feelings. When she arrives, I'll see if I can resist touching her. There are things I don't want to say out loud. This is the opportunity for her to see reality. At that moment, I wanted to burst in and shout at him. You don't want to hurt my feelings, yet you compare me to an eager puppy in front of your friends, letting them mock and belittle me. You don't deserve my devotion. But I held back. Why waste words on someone who doesn't value me? I turned around and fled, telling myself not to cry. After thinking about it, I called his brother's bodyguard. Remember when you begged me to help relieve Liam's brother's symptoms? Do you still need it? Send me the address right now. I'll come immediately. Half an hour earlier, the bodyguard had revealed a truth that Liam was hiding. By the way, Miss Arya, do you remember 5 years ago when the young master took you skiing and you fell into a ravine? The older brother led the rescue mission. We searched for 3 days and nights until we found you buried under the snow, rigid as an ice sculpture. You had no pulse. At that moment, the older brother told Liam that werewolves could share half of their life with their partner through a blood ritual on the night of the full moon. That ritual is another form of marking. Once done, they would consider that person their soulmate forever. But the younger brother didn't want to do it. He still couldn't bear to let her die like that. He held her and cried inconsolably. In the end, it was the older brother who saved her. You were very lucky. That night was a full moon which allowed us to save you. The older brother performed the ritual and shared half of his life with you. But in doing so, he also marked you, committing himself as your companion. He begged his brother not to tell you anything. For 5 years, every full moon night, the older brother endured it alone without bothering you and forbidding everyone from revealing the ritual. But tonight, he can't take it anymore. He's seriously injured and is fighting for his life. With the full moon, he won't survive without you. Please, could you come help him? I was shocked. I never imagined that I had actually died 5 years ago. Liam, who claimed to have loved me since childhood, wouldn't sacrifice half his life to save me. Instead, his cold-faced brother snatched me from the jaws of death. Still, I hardened my heart and told him, I'm sorry, but Liam needs me more tonight. I was willing to be ungrateful just to run and help Liam, only for him to treat me like an eager puppy, a simple toy. Yes, I was truly pathetic. I deserve to be treated so cheaply, but I won't debase myself anymore. I wiped away my tears of pain and humiliation, squeezing the phone and told him, it's too late to repay this life debt. If Declan really needs me tonight, I'll go right now. I'll give everything. The bodyguard let out a sob of relief. It's not too late at all. Miss Arya, I'll send you the location right away. If the young master weren't at death's door on a full moon night, I would never have disobeyed his orders or told you this. The family rules are very strict. I understood. Declan probably just wanted to save my life. Nothing more. He didn't want me to cling to him, and I only wanted to return the favor. It wasn't because Liam had broken my heart, and I was seeking refuge in his brother's arms. But I never imagined that when I arrived running at the VIP suite of the hospital, I would see Fiona, the campus beauty, standing outside the room, desperate to enter. Let me in quickly. Isn't it a full moon night? How do you know Mr. Declan doesn't need me? Declan, let me in to help you, please. I suddenly found it almost funny. Liam said Fiona wasn't an easy girl, and yet there she was, offering herself to his brother. The bodyguards, who previously wouldn't let Fiona in, opened the door with teary eyes as soon as they saw me. Miss Arya, you finally arrived. Please come in. The young master really needs you tonight. Envy and rage twisted Fiona's face. She shrieked, beside herself. Why, Arya? Yes, she can enter. Declan hurt himself so badly just to save her. She's a magnet for bad luck. How dare you let her in? I froze for a moment. That he saved me again. What did that mean? The room was already chaos. I saw Declan lying shirtless on the bed. His face was flushed, his short hair soaked in sweat, his fingertips clenched from the heat consuming him. The thick white bandages on his back were soaked in bright red blood. The doctor beside him shouted anxiously, "For heaven's sake, stop resisting. I beg you. Quickly find a woman to help you. The new bandages are already dripping again. How much blood do you think you have left to endure such torment? It's a full moon night. Werewolf blood boils more than normal and coagulation is nullified. Not even the best hemostatics I gave you work. We need to calm that internal fire now or you'll bleed out before dawn. Where is the girl who, according to you, can save the young master? How long will it take her to arrive?" The bodyguards by the bed had already seen me. They bowed with respect and gratitude. "Doctor, she's here." At those words, the man suffering his private hell suddenly opened his eyes. A pair of intimidating and brilliant dark red pupils barely contained the burning desire when they settled on my surprised and annoyed face. "Who called her? Get her out of here." The bodyguard bowed. "Young master, it was me. I'll accept any punishment as long as Miss Arya relieves your symptoms tonight. Besides, this time you got hurt again trying to save Miss Arya. You risked your life twice and never took credit for it. You may not feel aggrieved, but we do feel for you." I glanced at the imposing man lying on the bed. Although Liam and I were childhood friends, I had always avoided Declan like the plague because he was known as the living embodiment of the Grim Reaper. Even the cockiest bully became docile before him. Absolute dominance. Normally, I would flee at the sight of him. Now this man who inspired dread clung to the sheets. His feet involuntarily curled, fighting against himself. Every part of his body radiated waves of heat, his breathing increasingly ardent. The contrast was hypnotic. A beautiful man even in his agony. Fascinating. "What do you mean he was seriously injured for me again?" I asked. The bodyguard was about to speak, but Declan cut him off sharply. "Shut up. Try to say another word." Then he changed to a soft, though distant tone to address me. "Arya, leave. I don't need you here." The bodyguard, taking a risk, replied, "Young master, drop the act already. You won't get a wife by acting tough. Your mouth is hard, but your heart is soft. When Miss Arya is in danger, you risk your life. You'd even enter a fire for her. Do you think we're blind?" There was more than one bodyguard in the room, and all of them, without fear, began to vent. "That's right. Remember the full moon night last month? Who was staring at Miss Arya's photo on his phone, sighing like crazy until you were delirious calling her name. We bet you dreamed about her, too. And the previous full moon, you parked your car outside Miss Arya's dormitory all night. How many times did you want to go in and stop yourself at the last second? Even a ninja turtle would kneel and say, 'Daddy, if we don't speak up, Miss Arya will never know.' Do you really want to endure this your whole life?" "Shut up. I can bear it," Declan muttered, lowering his gaze. The doctor beside him erupted. "Bear my foot. If you continue like this, you won't see the sun rise. Miss, why are you standing there? Do something to relieve him." The bodyguards bowed even lower with the utmost reverence. "But what do? I have no idea." The doctor, while cutting the bloodied bandages with scissors, blurted out, "Kiss him." I blushed to my ears. Standing by the headboard, I didn't know how to kiss this proud man in front of everyone. Suddenly, a bodyguard exclaimed, "Miss Arya, do you know how the young master got hurt? 2 days ago, the auditorium at your school caught fire. Were you not trapped there, unable to escape? You even fainted from the smoke. You almost suffocated, but it was the young master who pulled you from the flames. Thanks to the marking, the young master senses when his partner is in danger. He ignored those of us who tried to stop him and launched himself into the inferno to find you. When he was carrying you out, a beam fell and set his entire back on fire. Even so, he endured the pain and used his last strength to get you out, only for his brother to snatch you from his arms. As soon as the younger one saw the older carrying the miss, he ran and took you away. If he cared so much, why didn't he go in himself to save you?" What? Couldn't believe it. So that's how Declan got hurt. I remembered waking up from the coma 2 days ago with Liam by my side. I had assumed he had saved me. Today's avalanche of information left no room for shyness or embarrassment. Saving a life was the priority. Without thinking further, I leaned towards Declan and, looking at his sensual lips, kissed him hard. "Don't touch me," Declan growled, pushing me away. But his hands gripped the sheets tighter and tighter. He was trying so hard to resist that his Adam's apple bobbed up and down, his eyes burning, frightening. "Don't touch me," Declan growled again. But there was something in his eyes that contradicted his words. I looked at him steadily, feeling a strange heat course through my body. All my life, I had been running after Liam, begging for crumbs of affection, while the man in front of me had literally sacrificed half his life to save me. "Declan?" I whispered, approaching his lips again. "Let me help you." His eyes, two burning embers, looked at me with an intensity that took my breath away. At that moment, all the bodyguards and the doctor discreetly left the room, leaving us alone. The head bodyguard turned before closing the door. "Miss Arya, please save him. He'll never admit it, but he's been watching you from afar for years." When the door closed, I was left alone with this imposing man writhing in pain and desire. How many times had I passed near him without noticing his gaze? How many times had I dismissed his presence to chase after Liam? "Go," Declan insisted with a hoarse voice. "I can bear it." "Liar," I replied, finding a courage I didn't know I had. "The bandages are soaked in blood. You're dying." With a determined movement, I sat on the edge of the bed. The heat emanating from his body was almost unbearable, like a human furnace. "You don't know what you're doing," he growled as his fingers involuntarily closed around the sheets. "Once I start, I won't be able to stop." I remembered his words. "We werewolves are the most loyal in love. The first person we mark becomes our soulmate for life." "How long have you been suffering this for me?" I asked, feeling something break inside my chest. 5 years of full moons enduring this pain alone. Declan didn't respond, but his breathing became more labored. Beads of sweat purled on his forehead and his perfectly sculpted chest. Suddenly, an idea occurred to me. If you marked me 5 years ago and suffered during each full moon, this means you've never. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw the answer. He had never sought relief with another woman. He had remained faithful to a bond that I didn't even know existed. "Why?" I asked, feeling tears form in my eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you were in love with my brother," he finally responded, his voice a harsh whisper. "You've always been in love with him." The truth of his words hit me like a slap. All these years chasing Liam, begging for his attention while he saw me as an eager puppy, a convenient toy, and here was Declan, sacrificing himself in silence. "Not anymore," I said with determination, moving closer. "I'm not in love with him anymore." I took his face in my hands, feeling the fever of his skin. Without thinking further, I joined my lips to his in a kiss that began softly but quickly turned desperate. The effect was immediate. An animal growl emerged from deep in his throat, and his arms, powerful as steel, surrounded me, drawing me to him. The heat between us was scorching, as if we were both burning from within. His hungry and demanding lips claimed mine, as if he had been waiting for this moment for an eternity. Perhaps he had been. As we kissed, I felt something strange inside me. A liquid heat, different from anything I had experienced before. It began to expand from my chest throughout my body. It was as if something dormant for years was finally awakening. The part of him that lived in me. Declan pulled his lips away for a moment, his eyes now completely red, shining like rubies in the dim light. "Arya," he gasped. Your eyes." I stood up, confused, and walked to the bathroom mirror. What I saw left me breathless. My eyes, normally brown, now shone with a golden amber tone like those of a wolf under the moon. I returned to the bed, fascinated and frightened in equal parts. "What's happening to me?" "The part of me that lives in you," he explained, his breathing calmer. "It's now responding to my presence and the full moon." I sat beside him, noticing that the bandages were no longer bleeding as much. The simple contact between us seemed to be healing him. It's always been like this every full moon? Declan nodded, reaching for my hand and intertwining his fingers with mine. Such a simple gesture and yet so intimate. The first year was the worst, he confessed. I didn't know how to control it. I almost came looking for you several times. Why didn't you? His gaze darkened. I saw you with Liam, always smiling for him, always by his side. What right did I have to impose myself? Rage grew inside me at the thought of all the wasted time. He never really saw me, I said, the words coming out bitter from my mouth. For him, I'm just entertainment. Declan sat up, ignoring the pain from his wounds, and took my face in his hands. His eyes, now calmer but still bright, studied me intensely. You were never entertainment for me, he said in a deep voice. From the first time I saw you, so small next to my brother, I knew you were special. But you were too young and too captivated by him. I vaguely remember the first time I saw Declan. I was 12 and he was 17. Tall and serious, always observing from afar, always intimidating. You scared me, I confessed with a small smile. Everyone said you were like death personified. He let out a soft laugh, the sound so unexpected that it made me shiver. I know, and perhaps it was better that way, keeping you away. And now? I asked, feeling that we were on the edge of something important. His eyes turned serious. Now I can't let you go, even if I wanted to. The heat in my body increased at his words. Was this what it felt like to be truly desired? Not as a toy or amusement, but as someone invaluable. Declan leaned forward, brushing his lips against my ear. I won't force you into anything, Arya. If after tonight you want to leave, I'll understand. What I did 5 years ago was selfish. I didn't want to live in a world without you. His honesty left me speechless. This man, so feared by everyone, was completely vulnerable before me. For the first time in my life, I felt the power of being truly loved. Without thinking, I leaned toward him and kissed him again. This kiss, different from the previous one, had no desperation, but something deeper, more meaningful. I'm not going anywhere, I whispered against his lips. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever. The relief on his face was like seeing the dawn, beautiful and transformative. Slowly, he drew me to him until I was lying by his side, careful not to press on his wounds. In that moment, with the full moon shining through the window and the heat of our bodies mingling, I understood what it meant to be truly loved. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like an eager puppy, but like a she-wolf finding her mate. Dawn found me awake, observing Declan's serene face as he slept. During the night, his wounds had healed considerably, the skin regenerating at a rate impossible for a normal human. My presence, my touch, seemed to be all he needed during those hours. He told me everything. How he had watched me grow, always from afar. How after the accident, when my heart stopped under the snow, Liam had refused to mark me. I don't want to be tied to her forever, his brother had said while I lay lifeless in the snow. Declan, desperate, made the decision that would change our lives forever. He marked me, sharing half of his werewolf essence with me, knowing that it meant we would be eternal companions. But I never wanted to impose it on you, he explained last night, caressing my cheek tenderly. I preferred to suffer every full moon than force you to be with me. His sacrifice now seemed so evident to me, so beautiful and painful at the same time. A soft knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. The head bodyguard peeked in, smiling at seeing us together. Miss Arya, young Liam is here. He demands to see you. I felt Declan's body tense beside me, his eyes opening immediately, alert and cautious. He doesn't have to come in if you don't want, his protective voice said. But I'd already made my decision. I want to see him, I affirmed. There are things that need to be made clear. I got up, adjusting my clothes and my disheveled hair. Declan also stood up, visibly better than the night before, although the bandages on his back still showed stains of dried blood. I'll go with you, he declared. His tone didn't allow for discussion. The bodyguard led us to a private room where Liam was waiting for me, nervously pacing back and forth. When he saw us enter together, his face transformed into a mask of disbelief and rage. "What the hell does this mean?" he demanded, his eyes fixed on my hand, firmly intertwined with Declan's. I stood firm, feeling a new confidence flow within me. "It means I finally opened my eyes, Liam." His gaze oscillated between us, stopping at his brother's bandages. "So you took advantage of his weakness," he accused me. "After all we've shared." Declan stepped forward, but I restrained him with a gentle gesture. "This was my battle." "Shared," I replied, my voice loaded with all the accumulated bitterness. "Do you mean when you called me your eager puppy? Or when you told your friends that I was just entertainment for you?" The color left his face. "You heard that. Every word," I confirmed. "Every humiliation, every mockery. While you were planning to win over Fiona, I was running to help you because I thought you needed me." Liam ran his hand through his hair, clearly nervous. "I didn't mean it. I was just impressing my friends." "That makes it worse," Declan intervened, his voice dangerously calm. "You used her as currency to elevate your status. You ridiculed her when she would have given her life for you." The brothers looked at each other, years of unresolved tension floating between them. "It's not fair," Liam protested, his expression changing to one of childish indignation. "I've always had her at my disposal, and now that I finally awaken my nature, you take her." Something broke inside me upon hearing those words. A rage that I didn't know I could feel began to grow, and with it a strange sensation throughout my body. "At your disposal?" I repeated. "Is that what you think? That I'm a possession?" To my surprise, my hands began to tremble and I felt an intense heat run through me. Declan noticed it immediately and surrounded me with his arm. "Arya, calm down," he whispered in my ear. "The full moon still has an effect on you. Don't let it control you." But it was too late. The rage, the humiliation, everything I had kept inside for years exploded within me. I felt my nails lengthen, turning into sharp claws while an animal growl escaped from my throat. Liam backed away, fear evident in his eyes. "What's happening to her?" he asked, alarmed. Declan held me firmly, his presence an anchor in the midst of the storm consuming me. "She carries my blood," he explained. "When I marked her, I gave her half of my life, of my essence. Now that part is awakening. I'm fighting to control the sensations invading me," I managed to articulate. "I was never yours, Liam. I never belonged to you. And now I clearly see that you're a spoiled child who discards what he has until someone else wants it." His eyes narrowed. "You don't know what you're talking about. Declan has always wanted what's mine." "Always what's yours?" Declan's voice resonated, dangerous. "Do you mean the girl you let die under the snow because you didn't want to be tied to her forever?" Liam's face paled even more. "No, I didn't. I was there," Declan continued, implacable. "I begged you to mark her, to share your life with her. You refused. You said it was too much sacrifice for someone who was just your friend." The pieces fit in my mind. All these years thinking that Liam valued me, that he was simply shy or indecisive. "You let me die?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Liam averted his gaze. "I didn't think it would work. I wasn't sure." Declan snorted. "Lie. You knew perfectly well that it would work. You preferred to preserve your precious freedom than save her life." The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at Liam. I really looked at him, perhaps for the first time. I no longer saw the idealized boy of my fantasies, but a selfish man incapable of loving anyone but himself. "Leave," I finally said. "I don't want to see you again." "You can't be serious," he protested, taking a step toward me. "Are you going to choose him?" Cold, insensitive Declan. I felt Declan's hand tense over mine. But when I spoke, I did so with total clarity. "There's nothing cold about a man who gave half of his life to save me, who endured years of pain and silence to not impose his presence on me, who risked everything to rescue me from a fire. The true coldness is letting someone who says they matter to you die." It's humiliating her in front of your friends. It's treating her like a convenient object that you can use and discard. Liam opened his mouth to protest, but something in my gaze stopped him. Perhaps it was my eyes, which according to Declan now shone with a supernatural golden tone. Or perhaps it was the certainty in my voice. "This conversation is over," I declared. "Declan and I have a lot to talk about, and you are no longer part of our lives." I turned around, taking Declan's hand, ready to leave. But Liam's voice, now charged with childish rage, stopped us. "This doesn't end here. She belongs to me. She's always been mine." In the blink of an eye, Declan released my hand and moved with superhuman speed. He grabbed his brother by the neck, lifting him off the ground with one hand, his eyes burning with an intense red. "Listen well, little brother," he growled, his voice more animal than human. "Arya is not a possession. She's not a toy, and she was certainly never yours. If you come near her again, if you speak to her like that again, I'll forget that we share blood. Is that clear?" Barely able to breathe, Liam nodded frantically. Declan released him, letting him fall to the floor where he coughed and gasped, trying to catch his breath. When he returned to my side, his eyes had returned to normal, but the power emanating from him was undeniable. "Let's go," he said softly, extending his hand to me. I took it without hesitation, and we left the room, leaving behind Liam and everything he represented in my life. The sun was shining brightly when we left the hospital. Declan, although still convalescing, moved with a natural grace that I had always secretly admired. "What happens now?" I asked as we headed to his car. He looked at me with that intensity that made my heart race. "Now we start again," he responded, a slight smile curving his lips. "No secrets, no silent sacrifices." "I like how that sounds," I smiled, feeling a freedom that I had never before experienced. As we drove away, I saw Fiona at the entrance of the hospital, her face distraught. Seeing us together, I couldn't help but feel a small satisfaction. In the car, Declan took my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine as if they had been destined for this forever. "There's something else you should know," he said, his voice serious. "The mark means that we're united in ways that not even I completely understand. What you felt last night, that part of me awakening in you, will increase." "Am I becoming a werewolf?" I asked, more curious than scared. He nodded partially. "The full moon will affect you, though not as much as me. You'll have strength, sharpened senses, a connection with me that will transcend the physical." I considered his words, feeling that I should be terrified. But instead, a strange calm invaded me. "Will I live as long as you?" I asked, referring to the part of his life that we now shared. His gaze softened. "Yes, we'll age together at a slower rate than normal humans." I smiled, squeezing his hand. "So, we have plenty of time to get to know each other properly, don't you think?" His deep and sincere laughter filled the car. "A lifetime," he confirmed. "And this time, I don't plan to watch you from afar." As the sun shone on us and the city was left behind, I felt that I had finally found my place in the world. Not as Liam's shadow, not as the girl who begged for crumbs of affection, but as Declan's partner, strong and valued. The golden eyes of the wolf that now lived in me shone with anticipation of the future that awaited. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My wife is a Disney adult, and we've been to Disney World for 9 times now. She has booked another Disney trip, and I am honestly losing my mind. My wife, Marina, and I have been married for the past 13 years. We're both 39. After experiencing financial hardship throughout our 20s and early 30s, Marina and I are now fortunate enough to have the means to travel once or twice a year. The only problem is that Marina literally only wants to go to Disney World. We have been to Disney 9 times now, and every vacation we have ever taken together was to go there, including our honeymoon. So we go, we eat Mickey Mouse ice cream, we were mousers, we stay in the official hotels, we see the characters, we ride the rides, we take pictures in front of Cinderella's castle, and we repeat this every trip. I'm honestly beyond sick of Disney, and I never really liked going in the first place. Marina knows this, but she has no concept of travel beyond Disney. We're currently planning a trip for April, and Marina, as usual, said that we could just go to Disney. I explained that it sounds fun, but hey, why don't we go somewhere like Hawaii this time? Marina was confused. She asked why we would go to Hawaii. I responded that we could enjoy the spas and go to the beach. Marina mumbled a half-hearted answer and walked away. A few days later, she approached me saying that she made hotel reservations for Hawaii. At first, I was excited because, although she did so without consulting me, it seemed like she was really listening. But then, when she showed me the hotel she booked, I found out she had made reservations for Aulani, the Disney resort in Hawaii. Frustrated, I told her that I'm honestly tired of Disney and that I just want to have a different experience this time. She told me that she was compromising with me and that I should be appreciative of the time she spent. I asked her if she would consider anything other than Disney for our trip, and she said no. At this point, I said that I wasn't going. Now she's furious. She canceled the reservation she made, and now she's looking for a friend to go to Disney World with again without me. Was I the jerk here for not trying to accommodate her request? 1 week later, here's the update. I screwed up. I know most people didn't consider me a jerk, but Marina showed great openness to my idea. She took the initiative to book the hotel because she wanted me to be happy. When I said, nope, no Disney, she felt like I hadn't made any effort to consider her feelings, and she was completely right. I hadn't. In a twisted way, it was my form of revenge for her dragging me to Disney World all those times. In the last post, some people commented that Aulani doesn't even really feel like a Disney resort. That's something I should have researched myself before throwing down the gauntlet with Marina. When I looked into it, it seemed like a typical Hawaiian resort. In my defense, going to Disney World 9 times has made me kinda sensitive, and I'm pretty sure I'd only see mouse ears on a Rorschach test at this point, but I really shouldn't have jumped to conclusions. A day after I made the post, I approached Marina and apologized. I was wrong. Yes, she might be a Disney adult, but aside from always wanted to go to their theme parks, she's never been obnoxious about it. I said I was sorry and asked if I could rebook the hotel, and Marina responded that she'd love to go to Aulani with me. When I told her it wasn't even that Disney, Marina said, of course, I knew that. I wanted to go because my sister said it was beautiful. Marina and I have replanned our vacation and now we're super excited to go. I came to this realization because a lot of people pointed out things I should have figured out myself. Hi again, everyone. This situation all started because my wife Marina and I argued about going to Disney World again for vacation. I didn't want to go because we had already been 9 times, and when I suggested Hawaii, Marina made reservations at Aulani, a Disney-owned resort. I immediately rejected the idea, mistakenly thinking it was just another Disney vacation. Eventually, I realized I was wrong and that Aulani was actually a great compromise. Unfortunately, we won't be going to Aulani for our upcoming vacation. A couple of days after Christmas, Marina had a minor car accident. She confused drive with reverse and accidentally backed into our garage door. When I heard the loud bang, I ran outside and found Marina sitting in the car holding her neck. I immediately drove her to the hospital where she got x-rays. She seemed okay, but the doctor said that based on her symptoms, headache, neck pain, and numbness in her fingers, she might have whiplash. Marina and I figured she'd feel better in a few days, but almost 2 weeks later, she's still complaining about back pain. Yesterday, she told me she wouldn't be able to go to Hawaii in a few months. I asked her what she wanted to do and, while apologizing profusely, she asked if we could postpone the trip. I told her she had absolutely nothing to apologize for. After that, she said she felt bad about not being able to go to Hawaii but mentioned she might be able to handle going to Disney World. At first, I didn't understand, but she explained that Disney has very high accessibility and, in the worst case, ECV rentals. She doubts it will be necessary, but she assured me we could take it easy there. I know this isn't the ending people here were hoping for, and it's definitely not what I wanted for my next vacation, but Marina's health has to come first. We've made our reservations. It's not where I wanted to go, but Marina is super happy right now, and that's what matters most to me. I truly wanted to believe that this trip would be different, that this time Marina and I would find a balance, something that both of us could enjoy. After everything that happened with the accident, I thought the best thing to do was to give in. Her health was the priority, and if Disney offered accessibility, then so be it. We made the reservations, planned everything, and I moved forward with the idea. But deep down, something didn't sit right with me. Marina kept mentioning that she was still in pain, still uncomfortable. I was worried, of course. I stayed present, attentive, helping her with anything she needed, but something wasn't adding up. Days before the trip, I noticed Marina wasn't talking much about the pain anymore. She seemed more energetic, full of life, as if nothing had ever happened. When I asked how she was feeling, she gave vague answers. "Oh, I'm feeling a bit better today." Or, "It still hurts a little, but I'm taking care of myself." Nothing specific. Yet, suddenly, she was walking around the house with ease, carrying heavy bags, going up and down the stairs without hesitation. That made me wonder if she was really as hurt as she claimed. We arrived at Disney and it was as if the accident had never happened. Marina was glowing, smiling from ear to ear, running around so she wouldn't miss a single attraction. I watched all of this with a mix of confusion and frustration. Where was the pain? Where was the concern for her health? She barely stopped to rest, and the worst part, she didn't even mention the accessibility she had used as an excuse to convince me to come. No wheelchair, no electric scooter, nothing. It was like the accident had been erased from her memory. On the second day, I couldn't hold it in anymore and asked her directly, "Marina, what about the pain? Weren't you supposed to be taking it easy?" She laughed like I had told a joke. "Oh honey, it's different here. The energy of this place makes me forget everything." That answer hit me like a punch in the stomach. Forget everything? How does back pain just disappear because we're surrounded by children's music and people in costumes? It didn't make sense. I stayed quiet, but inside something started boiling. Every step she took, every exaggerated laugh, every rush toward another souvenir store, it all started to feel more and more fake. She was acting like a spoiled child as if nothing else mattered, and I started putting the pieces together. The sudden pain, the strange accident right after Christmas, her insistence on postponing Hawaii but suggesting Disney. It all started to make sense. What if Marina had exaggerated the accident just to force this trip? The thought made me sick. What if she used it as an excuse to avoid going somewhere that didn't involve Mickey and castles? I tried to push that thought away. I had known her for years, right? That couldn't be it. But the more I watched her, the more it made sense. By the fourth day, we argued. We were standing in yet another endless line when I said, "Are you really feeling okay? Because it sure doesn't look like you had an accident recently." She stopped, looked at me coldly, and said, "I told you I'm fine. Why are you so stuck on this? Can't you just enjoy yourself?" But I couldn't. That cold response was all the confirmation I needed. This wasn't about having fun. It was about being deceived, about how she manipulated the situation to drag me back here. And now, surrounded by adults wearing mouse ears and screaming kids, I realized I was completely alone on this trip. In the following days, Marina practically ignored me. She kept herself busy with shopping, shows, and rides. I just followed in silence. There was no point in arguing anymore. I had lost. But inside, something had shattered. It wasn't just about Disney anymore. It was about trust, about respect, about the fact that the woman I had been married to for 13 years was capable of manipulating something so serious just to get what she wanted. On the last day, while we were packing our bags, she casually said, "Everything was perfect, wasn't it? I think we've never had so much fun." I just looked at her and replied, "It went exactly the way you planned." She paused for a second, but then kept folding clothes like nothing happened. At that moment, I knew something had changed between us, and when we got back home, things would never be the same again. Ever since we got back from that Disney trip, something inside me broke. Marina was perfectly fine, without a trace of pain, as if the accident had never happened. No more complaints, no more backaches, no more fatigue. She went about her life with the same energy as always, as if the whole health scare had been nothing more than a fleeting inconvenience. But to me, it wasn't. From that moment on, our relationship was never the same. The trust that had already been shaken during the trip was completely gone. Our conversations became shorter, our affection more distant. Marina carried on like nothing had changed, But the way she looked at me, the way she spoke, made it clear there was now an invisible wall between us. And me, I simply couldn't trust her anymore. It wasn't easy. Questioning Marina about the accident or how she recovered so quickly felt pointless. I knew that if I tried, she would come up with some excuse or deflect the topic, and honestly, it was exhausting. Arguing, doubting, constantly picking apart every little thing. It drained me, so I stopped. I stayed quiet. I decided it was easier to live with a doubt than to waste my energy on endless fights. But the resentment stayed, and with it came distance. We spent months like this, coexisting like strangers under the same roof. Our conversations revolved around the basics: bills, chores, responsibilities. Marina would occasionally talk about new Disney releases, upcoming events, things she wanted to do next time we visited. I pretended to listen. I gave her half smiles, nodded along, but inside I felt completely hollow. I wasn't part of that world anymore. As our next vacation period approached, I knew I had to do something different. I didn't want to fall into the same cycle, so I took the initiative. I pretended to have booked a vacation far in advance. Somewhere completely new, a destination far away from anything Disney-related. Somewhere peaceful, full of nature, somewhere we could reconnect. When I told Marina, I was hoping for at least a hint of surprise, maybe some genuine interest, but that's not what I got. She stared at me for a moment, then she let out a bitter laugh. Seriously? You booked a trip without telling me, and it's not even Disney. I swallowed hard. I tried to explain, to tell her I wanted something different for us, something meaningful, but Marina just rolled her eyes. I'm not going. That sounds boring. I've told you before, Disney is the only place where I truly feel happy. That crushed me. It wasn't just the refusal. It was the utter disregard, the way she spoke like my effort meant nothing. She didn't even try to understand. The tension in the house grew heavier in the following days. Then, out of nowhere, Marina told me she wouldn't be able to travel during the vacation. She said she had to take care of a friend who was going through health problems. I just nodded. I didn't argue. The truth is, I didn't have the energy anymore. It felt like just another excuse, another way to avoid anything that didn't revolve around her perfect Disney bubble. That's when it hit me. I was dragging myself through this relationship, living on autopilot, waiting for something to change when deep down I knew it never would. Marina was stuck in her own world, and I was there, slowly disappearing. I decided I needed space. I didn't say anything right away, but I began pulling away. I stayed up later at night, left the house without saying where I was going, avoided long conversations, and honestly, Marina didn't even seem to notice, or if she did, she didn't care. I reached a point where I had to be honest with myself. I wasn't happy anymore. There was no love left, only memories of what we used to be. I was carrying the weight of a relationship that was draining me with no hope of getting better. Now, as I let this all out, I realized I should have set boundaries a long time ago. Maybe my mistake was always giving in, always trying to understand, always hoping for change that would never come. I believed marriage was a partnership, but what we had turned into a silent battle, a fight where only one of us was still trying. And I'm tired of being sidelined, manipulated, and pretending everything was okay. Tired of being invisible in my own home. Looking back now, I see that love shouldn't feel like a burden. It shouldn't be a game where one person always loses. And I lost. I lost time, energy, and most of all, myself. And deep down, Marina lost too. She lost someone who tried everything, but you can't fight for something alone. I just wanted to be happy, but not with someone who only thinks about themselves. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My name is Lucas. I'm 25, and last week, my life flipped upside down in a way that would almost be funny if it didn't hurt so much. I grew up in a small house in the suburbs with my parents and my younger sister, Emily. We weren't rich, but we got by. My dad worked long hours at a factory. My mom stayed home, and I worked part-time jobs all through college to help cover bills. For years, I've chipped in for groceries, utilities, even car repairs. When Dad's old truck broke down, it wasn't out of obligation. It was just what you do when you love your family. But lately, I'd started to feel like they didn't really see me as family. More like a walking wallet. Every time I got paid, it was, "Hey Lucas, we're short on rent." Or, "Lucas, your sister needs new tires. Can you help?" I'd nod, swipe my card, and tell myself that one day things would get easier. That one day they'd be proud of me instead of treating me like the backup plan. Then out of nowhere, my dad bought a lottery ticket. He never plays, said it was a waste of money. But that night, he came home with the biggest grin I'd ever seen on his face. "You're looking at a millionaire," he shouted, waving the ticket like it was a golden ticket to Willy Wonka's factory. Mom screamed. Emily jumped up and down. And for a second, I felt it too, this rush of relief like all our problems were finally over. But that's when things started to get weird. The next morning, Dad sat me down at the kitchen table. His tone wasn't joyful anymore. It was cold. "Lucas," he said, "you don't need to keep living here. We don't need your money anymore. In fact, I don't want your dirty money touching this house. Pack your things. You've got until tonight." I just sat there stunned. I'd been paying their bills for years, keeping this family afloat. And now, when they were finally financially secure, he wanted me gone. "Dirty money?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What are you talking about?" Dad just shrugged like it was obvious. "You think I didn't notice? You've been acting like some kind of hero, always swooping in to save us. Well, we don't need saving anymore. Get out." Mom wouldn't even look at me. Emily smirked like she'd been waiting for this moment forever. And that's when I saw it. The lottery ticket was still sitting on the counter next to Dad's coffee mug. I picked it up, my heart pounding, and when my eyes landed on the numbers, I burst out laughing so hard that everyone just stared at me like I'd lost my mind. My laughter didn't stop for a good 30 seconds. It wasn't happy laughter, more like the kind of laugh that bubbles out when you're standing on the edge of something unthinkable. The kind that comes out when everything feels so absurd that your brain doesn't know what else to do. "What's so funny?" Emily asked, her voice dripping with irritation. I wiped a tear from my eye and held up the ticket. "Dad, this isn't the winning ticket. Look." His smug grin faltered as I slid it across the table to him. The winning numbers were 04, 09, 16, 23, 32, and 41. "This thing has 02, 11, 15, 24, 30, and 40. You didn't win anything." For a moment there was silence. Mom blinked. Emily frowned. And Dad's face slowly turned a shade of red I'd never seen before. He snatched the ticket back from me like I'd just stolen it. "You're lying," he snapped. "I checked these numbers last night, then checked them again," I said, my voice calm, but my hands shaking. "You can even pull up the lottery website." He glared at me, but grabbed his phone anyway, fumbling with the screen as Mom and Emily crowded around him. I just stood there, my heart pounding in my ears, waiting for the moment it would click. And then it did. His face dropped. Mom gasped. Emily muttered, "Wait, what?" "No," Dad whispered. "No, no, no. This has to be wrong." "It's not wrong," I said quietly. "You didn't win. You threw me out of the house over nothing." That should have been the moment everything snapped back to reality. The moment where Dad would look up embarrassed and mutter something about getting carried away, maybe even apologize. But instead, he doubled down. "Fine," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Even if I didn't win, I still don't want you here. You think you're so much better than us, Lucas. Always acting like we owe you something because you paid a few bills. Well, guess what? We didn't ask you to." I stared at him, stunned. "Didn't ask me to? Are you serious? You called me at work last month crying because you couldn't make rent." Mom crossed her arms. "We were desperate, Lucas. We thought you helped because you loved us, not because you wanted to hold it over our heads forever." "I never held it over your heads," I said, my voice rising. "I just wanted to be part of this family. But apparently that's only true as long as I'm useful to you." Emily scoffed. "Oh, give me a break. You act like you're some kind of saint just because you paid for groceries a couple of times. Big deal. Plenty of people live at home without helping at all." "Yeah," I shot back. "Like you. You don't have a job, Emily. You've been living here rent-free for years. Her face twisted into a smirk. That's different. I'm still in school. You're 22 and you've switched majors 3 times, I said. When exactly do you plan on graduating? Dad slammed his hand on the table, making all of us jump. Enough! I will not have you disrespecting your sister in my house. You're leaving today, Lucas, whether you like it or not. That was it. No apology, no recognition of how much I'd sacrificed. Just more accusations and a deadline. I felt something inside me crack. All those years of biting my tongue, working late shifts, giving them every spare dollar I had just so we could keep the lights on, and now I was being kicked out because they no longer needed me. I packed my things in silence. Mom didn't come to my room. Emily walked past my door, humming like she was celebrating. Dad stayed planted in front of the TV, acting like nothing had happened. Every box I filled felt heavier than the last. Not because of what was inside, but because of what it represented. My whole life being shoved into cardboard and taken away. When I finally carried the last box out to my car, Dad stood at the door. "Leave the house key," he said. I dropped it in his hand and looked him straight in the eye. "One day," I said, my voice steady, "you're going to realize what you threw away today. And when that day comes, I hope you remember this moment." He didn't say anything. He just shut the door in my face. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. For the next few weeks, I stayed at a friend's apartment trying to get back on my feet. I picked up extra hours at work, saved as much as I could, and kept telling myself I'd be okay. But then the texts started coming. First, it was just little things for Mom. "Hey, do you know when the water bill is due?" Or, "Emily's car broke down. Any chance you could help?" I ignored them at first, thinking they'd get the hint. But they didn't. The texts became guilt trips. "You know, we took care of you all these years. The least you could do is help your sister. Your dad's blood pressure is high. He shouldn't have to stress about money right now." I stared at those messages, my hands clenched into fists. They kicked me out, told me they didn't need me, and now they were asking for money again. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Emily sent me a picture. It was her in front of a brand new car, grinning from ear to ear. "Look what Dad got me," the caption read. I saw red. They were buying her cars while asking me for money. They were treating me like an ATM, even after they'd thrown me out. I felt something cold settle in my chest that day, because if they wanted me out of their lives so badly, they were about to find out what that really meant. I wish I could say I cooled off after Emily's message, that I let it go, focused on myself and didn't let it eat me alive. But it did. It gnawed at me every single day. Every time I clocked in at work, every time I skipped buying myself lunch to save a few bucks. Every time I walked past the display of new phones and reminded myself my cracked screen still worked. The thought that they had thrown me out, bought Emily a brand new car, and were still bold enough to ask me for money made my stomach twist. Then came the moment that really broke something inside me. It was a Friday night, and I was sitting on my friend Evan's couch, finally relaxing after a long week. My phone buzzed, a message from Mom. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something in me hesitated. I opened it. "Lucas, we need you to send $500 tonight. The power bill is overdue and they're threatening to shut it off. Your sister has an important online exam this weekend. Don't let her fail because of you." I stared at that message for a long time. Because of me? They threw me out, told me I wasn't part of the family anymore, and now her failing school was my fault. I didn't reply right away. I put my phone down and tried to focus on the TV, but my chest felt tight. I could almost hear my dad's voice in my head. "We didn't ask you to help all those times." That's when the second message came through. "This is serious, Lucas. If you care about your family at all, you'll help us. We already gave Emily all the money we had for tuition and her car. There's nothing left." That one stung. It was the unspoken truth laid bare. They had spent what little they had left on Emily, and now they wanted me to pick up the slack again. I typed out a reply and deleted it 3 times before finally sending, "You kicked me out. Find another solution." I expected that to be the end of it. Maybe a passive-aggressive guilt trip. Maybe silence. Instead, An hour later, there was a knock at the apartment door. It was Dad. Evan opened it, startled, and stepped aside as Dad barged in like he owned the place. "We need to talk," he said, his tone low and angry. I stood up, my stomach dropping. "What are you doing here?" "You ignored your mother," he said, glaring at me. "She told you we need money. You're sitting here while your family suffers. You mean while you buy Emily new cars?" I shot back. His jaw tightened. "She's in school. She needs support." "I needed support too," I said, my voice rising. "But you never gave it to me. I worked my butt off to keep that house running. And you kicked me out the second you thought you didn't need me anymore. You were poisoning this family," he snapped. "Always making us feel guilty for accepting your help. You think we didn't notice?" I felt like I'd been slapped. Poisoning the family? Dad, I kept us from losing the house. "Enough," he barked. "You're giving us $500 tonight. If you don't bother coming around again. You'll regret it." There it was. The line that crossed everything. He wasn't just asking. He was threatening me. Evan stepped forward then, clearly uncomfortable. "Hey, maybe you should go. This isn't the place." But Dad ignored him. He stepped closer until he was right in my face. "You think you're so independent now? Let's see how long you last when you've burned every bridge you have." Something inside me snapped. "Get out," I said quietly. He sneered. "Excuse me? Get out." He glared at me for a long moment, then turned on his heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind him so hard the frame rattled. I stood there, my hands shaking, my chest heaving. Evan put a hand on my shoulder, but didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. Later that night, I logged into my bank account to check my balance just to reassure myself that I was still okay financially. That's when I saw it. A $500 transfer I hadn't authorized. My heart sank. I clicked through the details and felt the blood drain from my face. It wasn't a transfer. It was a withdrawal from my savings account. Somehow, my parents had accessed my bank account and taken the money anyway. I sat there in stunned silence for a long time. I'd given them access years ago, back when I was still living at home, just in case of emergencies. I'd never thought they would use it against me, but they had. And that was the moment everything changed. Because this wasn't about helping them anymore. This was theft. This was betrayal. This was the people I had trusted most in the world proving that they would take from me, lie to me, and throw me away without hesitation. That night, I closed my account and moved what little money I had left to a new bank. I blocked Mom and Dad's numbers, but inside I was seething. Because they had just started a war. The next few weeks were some of the hardest of my life. For the first time, I felt completely unmoored, like the ground I'd been standing on my whole life had crumbled beneath me. I didn't just lose my home. I lost my family. The people who were supposed to have my back had proven that when push came to shove, they'd rather shove me out the door. I didn't tell Evan what happened with my account. He already felt bad enough letting me stay with him rent-free, and I didn't want to add to his stress. Instead, I kept my head down and threw myself into work. I picked up double shifts, stayed late, and took any overtime I could get. It wasn't enough to distract me completely, though. The anger still simmered under the surface like hot coals. Some nights after Evan went to bed, I'd sit on the couch staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head. Every time Dad asked me for money, every time Mom guilt-tripped me, every time Emily smirked as though she had won some invisible competition. I thought about that slammed door, about Dad's words, "You'll regret it," and my chest would tighten until I felt like I couldn't breathe. But the worst part was the silence. No texts, no calls, nothing from them after they took the money. It was like I had been erased from their lives except when they needed something. The first week, I kept expecting Mom to reach out, maybe to apologize, maybe to explain. By the second week, I realized no apology was coming. By the third, I knew for sure they thought they were right. One rainy night, I decided to drive by the house. I told myself it was just to grab the last few things I'd left in the garage. An old box of tools, some childhood mementos. But really, I think I just wanted to see if they missed me. When I pulled up, the driveway was full. Emily's new car was parked right in the middle like a trophy. The lights were on, and through the living room window I could see all three of them sitting together laughing. My mom leaned on my dad's shoulder, Emily gesturing wildly with her hands as she told some story. They looked happy, and it broke me. I didn't go in. I didn't knock. I just sat in my car watching them through the rain-streaked glass until the lump in my throat became too much and I had to drive away. Back at Evan's apartment, I stayed up late again, this time with a notebook and pen. I started writing things down, numbers, dates, amounts. All the times I had bailed them out, how much money I had sent over the years, how many hours I had worked to do it. I wanted to see it all on paper. By the time I was done, the total was enough to make me feel sick. Thousands of dollars. Thousands that could have gone toward my own life. A better car, my own apartment, maybe even a vacation. Instead, it had gone to them. And for what? For them to toss me aside the second they thought they had won the lottery. The next morning, I opened my laptop and started looking for a new place to live. It didn't have to be big, just mine. Somewhere I could lock the door and not have to worry about who was going to take my money while I slept. Evan noticed the change in me. "You're quieter than usual," he said one night as we ate takeout on the couch. "I'm just tired," I said. He gave me a look like he didn't believe me, but didn't push. That was the thing about Evan. He didn't pry, he just made space for me to figure things out. And slowly I started to. I found a tiny one-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes from work. It wasn't much. Creaky floors, thin walls, and an ancient stove that made a strange whistling sound. But when I signed the lease, something shifted inside me. For the first time since leaving my parents' house, I felt like I was taking back control. Moving day was bittersweet. Evan helped me carry boxes up the narrow staircase, joking about how I was finally an adult now. I laughed along, but inside I was nervous. This was it. No more safety nets, no more fallback plan. That night, as I sat on the floor of my new apartment eating a sandwich because I hadn't unpacked my dishes yet, I realized I felt lighter. Lonely, yes, but also free. I started working on myself in ways I hadn't before. I set a strict budget, opened a savings account only I had access to, and began reading about personal finance. I got serious about work, volunteering for projects that could lead to a promotion. I even started going to the gym with Evan just to clear my head. But no matter how much I improved my own life, the anger didn't go away. If anything, it grew sharper with time because every time I opened social media, there was Emily posting about some new things she got. A designer purse, concert tickets, dinner at expensive restaurants. All funded by my parents, of course. And then one day, I got a message from a mutual friend who still lived in our old neighborhood. "Hey, just so you know, your parents have been telling everyone you abandoned them after your dad lost his job. They're saying you refused to help and left them to fend for themselves." I read that message 3 times before it sank in. They weren't just ignoring me. They were rewriting the story to make me the villain. And that was the moment I decided this wasn't just about moving on anymore. If they wanted to tell the world I was selfish, that I was the bad guy, I was going to make sure they understood exactly what selfish really looked like. I didn't know how yet, but I was done letting them write the narrative. When I look back now, I think the moment I signed that lease was the start of everything. It didn't feel powerful at the time, more like a survival move. But once I had my own space, my own set of keys, something in me began to shift. First, it was just small things. I started keeping a routine. Wake up at 6:30, cook breakfast, pack my own lunch, hit the gym with Evan after work. For years, I had been running on fumes, letting exhaustion and guilt run my life. Now, every choice felt intentional. And then opportunities started to appear. About 2 months after moving into the apartment, my manager at work pulled me aside. "Lucas," she said, "I've noticed how much you've been stepping up lately. We have a team lead position opening up next quarter. I think you'd be a great fit." For a second, I just stood there shocked. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. Not my parents, not teachers, not anyone. It lit a fire in me. I spent the next few weeks doing everything I could to prove I was worthy of that role. I stayed late, took on projects no one else wanted, and even trained a couple of new hires. By the time the promotion became official, I was ready. The raise wasn't massive, but it was enough to give me breathing room. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was just surviving. I was building something. I used part of the extra money to furnish the apartment properly, piece by piece. A small dining table, a second-hand couch, real dishes instead of paper plates. And with each little improvement, I felt myself growing. I started seeing friends more often. Not just Evan, but people I hadn't had time for back when every paycheck was going straight to my parents. We'd grab dinner, catch a movie, just hang out. And I realized how much of life I had been missing. The gym became a kind of sanctuary for me. First, I hated it. My arms burned, my legs felt like jelly, and I wanted to quit every 5 minutes. But slowly I got stronger. I started to see definition in my shoulders. My posture improved, and the constant knot of anxiety in my chest loosened a little more each day. One night, Evan and I were walking back from the gym when he said, "You know, you're different now." I raised an eyebrow. Different how? More. I don't know. Confident. Like you're not just reacting to everything anymore. You're actually living. I smiled at that because he was right. But it wasn't just about my personal growth. My professional life was changing, too. The projects I had taken on as team lead were going so well that upper management started to notice. I got invited to meetings I'd never been part of before. People started asking for my input, listening when I spoke. And then came the big break. One of our senior analysts went on leave unexpectedly, and I was asked to temporarily take over one of their accounts. It was complicated work, the kind of thing that could make or break your career, but I poured myself into it. Late nights, early mornings, triple-checking everything. When the quarterly results came in, the account had not only improved, but exceeded expectations. My manager called me into her office again, this time with the director sitting beside her. "Lucas," she said, smiling, "we're impressed. We'd like to make your role permanent, and there will be a salary adjustment to reflect the additional responsibilities." I left that office in a daze, my heart pounding. I called Evan on the way home, barely able to contain my excitement. By the time I got to the apartment, he already had 2 beers on the counter. "You did it," he said, grinning. "Yeah," I said, grinning back. "I really did." That night, as I sat in my living room, surrounded by the quiet hum of a place that was truly mine, I realized something important. I didn't need them anymore. Not their approval, not their validation, not their guilt trips or their manipulation. I was doing fine without them. More than fine. I was thriving. But that's when the first crack appeared in the silence. It was a Sunday morning, and I was sipping coffee by the window when my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Lucas, it's Mom. Please call me. Your dad isn't doing well." For a moment, my heart clenched. Despite everything, they were still my parents. I stared at the message, torn. Then another one came through. "We need help with the mortgage. If we lose the house, your sister will have to drop out. Please, just this once. Just this once." I set the phone down and stared out the window for a long time. Because while part of me wanted to rush back to fix everything like I used to, another part of me, the part that had spent months rebuilding my life, knew better. This wasn't just about money. It was about control. And for the first time, I held all the cards. I didn't reply that day. Instead, I went for a run, pushing myself harder than I ever had before until my lungs burned and sweat stung my eyes. By the time I got back to the apartment, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, I wasn't going to let them write the story this time. I was going to write it myself. And if they thought they could guilt me into handing over everything I'd worked so hard to build, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. I didn't respond to Mom's messages right away, but I didn't delete them either. I kept them, letting them sit in my phone like a reminder of the old pattern they were trying to pull me back into. It was tempting, the idea of swooping in, saving the day, being the good son again. But I knew where that road led. I'd walked it before, and it had ended with me homeless, broke, and betrayed. So instead of replying, I went back to my notebook. I had kept every page of the one I started the night I sat in Evan's apartment, adding up all the money I'd given them. Now I began a new one. This one wasn't just about recording the past. It was about planning the future. Step 1. I made sure my financial position was unshakable. I'd been saving steadily since my promotion, but now I doubled down. I cut unnecessary expenses, automated my savings, and even opened an investment account. My company offered a 401k match I had never taken advantage of. I signed up that week. I read books about money management, watched hours of free lectures online, and even spoke to a financial advisor. The more I learned, the angrier I became because looking at the numbers, I realized that if I had never given my parents that money, I could already own a small home outright. I could have been years ahead. That anger didn't crush me this time. It sharpened me. It gave me clarity. Step 2. I started documenting everything. Every text, every call, every voicemail. I even asked a couple of old friends to write down what they remembered about all the times I had helped my parents. The nights they had called me in a panic about bills, the times they saw me handing over cash. One of them still had screenshots of messages my mom had sent thanking me for covering utilities or groceries. I asked her to send them to me. Felt strange gathering this evidence, like I was building a case. But that's exactly what I was doing because deep down I knew this wasn't just about revenge. This was about protecting myself. If they were willing to drain my account once, what else would they do? What stories would they tell about me to justify it? Step 3. I started paying attention to their financial situation. At first, I didn't care what they were doing. I had blocked them and moved on. But after Mom's message about the mortgage, I became curious. I still had access to some public records from when I used to help pay their bills. I started looking into property tax records, mortgage filings, anything I could legally access. That's when I found out they had taken out a second mortgage on the house shortly after I left. I sat there staring at the document, shaking my head. They had borrowed against the house, probably to buy Emily her car and cover her tuition. And now they were in trouble. And here was the twist of irony that almost made me laugh. If they defaulted, they wouldn't just lose the house. They'd lose the only thing they had that tied them to a middle-class life. It was exactly what they had accused me of threatening them with. Except this time, I wouldn't have to lift a finger. Step 4. I began building a new network of allies. I stayed in touch with Evan, of course. But I also reconnected with some extended relatives. People I hadn't seen in years because my parents had always dismissed them as meddlers. One of them, my Aunt Sarah, turned out to be an accountant. Over coffee one afternoon, I told her a carefully edited version of what had happened, leaving out the ugliest details but making it clear I had been financially taken advantage of. She nodded sympathetically and said something I'll never forget. "You don't have to let them do this to you again, Lucas. You have options." When I told her about the second mortgage, she actually winced. "They're digging a hole they can't climb out of," she said. "And if they think you're going to fill it for them, they're in for a rude awakening." She helped me look over my own finances, gave me advice on protecting my assets, and even suggested I consider legal steps if they ever tried to access my accounts again. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone. Step 5. I began thinking about timing. I didn't want to just cut them off. That would have been easy, too easy. I wanted them to see me succeed, to see the life I was building without them, to realize little by little that they had pushed away the one person who could have been their greatest ally. So, I started posting more on social media, not bragging, just subtle things. A picture of my apartment with the caption, "First place I can really call mine." A photo with my coworkers after a big project launch. Me and Evan at the gym grinning after hitting a personal best. I wasn't trying to show off. I was reminding them I existed and that I was doing just fine without them. The messages started to trickle in again after that. Mom first, then Emily. "We miss you. It's been too long. Dad wants to see you." But I wasn't the same Lucas they had kicked out. I didn't reply immediately. I let days pass before sending a simple, neutral response. "I'm busy. Maybe another time." And then one day, completely out of the blue, Emily sent me a message that nearly made me laugh out loud. "Dad said if you come home for dinner this weekend, he'll apologize. He admits he overreacted. It should have been everything I wanted, the thing I had dreamed about on all those lonely nights in Evan's apartment." But instead of feeling relieved, I felt powerful. Because for the first time, they weren't holding the cards. I was and I wasn't ready to let them off the hook just yet. I didn't go to dinner that weekend. In fact, I didn't go the weekend after that either. I waited slowly, deliberately, because this wasn't just about hearing Dad say the words, "I'm sorry." This was about shifting the balance of power completely, about making sure they understood what they had done and what it had cost them. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. One afternoon, I got a call from Aunt Sarah. "Lucas," she said carefully, "I think you should know your parents are behind on their mortgage again. I know you're not involved with them right now, but I thought you'd want to be aware." I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there for a while staring at my apartment wall. This was it. This was the moment I had been quietly preparing for. I didn't rush into anything. Instead, I doubled down on my planning. I met with Sarah again, and she explained to me exactly what would happen if they defaulted. How long the process would take, what notices they'd get, what options they'd have. She also reminded me that I was under no obligation to step in. That night, I went through all my notes, all my documentation, all my records of what I had given them. I put everything into a single organized folder, not just for me, but for anyone who might ever try to twist the narrative again. I wanted proof of exactly what I had done for them and why I was no longer doing it. Then, when I felt completely prepared, I made my move. I texted Mom and told her I'd come to dinner. The reaction was immediate. A flood of happy emojis, exclamation points. Emily will be so excited. Walking up to that house felt surreal. The same house I had been kicked out of months ago. Standing there with my car parked in the driveway like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Emily opened the door, smiling, but it looked forced, nervous. Mom hugged me first, too tightly, like she was afraid I might slip away again. Dad was at the table, arms crossed, expression unreadable. We sat down to eat. At first, it was awkward, small talk about work, the weather, Emily's classes. Then, Dad cleared his throat. "Lucas," he said slowly, "I need to say something. I was wrong about a lot of things." I stayed quiet, letting him speak. "I shouldn't have kicked you out. I shouldn't have said what I said about your money. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now I wasn't. I'm sorry." There it was. The apology I had imagined so many times. But instead of rushing to accept it, I let the silence hang for a beat. "Thank you," I said finally. "I appreciate that." Mom looked relieved, like she thought that was the end of it. But I wasn't done. I pulled out the folder I had brought with me and set it on the table. "This," I said, "is everything I've given this family over the years. Every rent payment, every grocery run, every emergency fund transfer. I want you to look at it." Mom hesitated, but I opened it for her. Page after page of numbers, receipts, screenshots, printed messages. Emily's smile faltered. Dad's jaw tightened. "This is not to rub it in," I said calmly. "It's to make something very clear. I've done my part. More than my part. I kept this family afloat when no one else could, and you took advantage of that until I had nothing left." Dad didn't say anything, but his face was pale. "So here's where we stand," I continued. "I'm not your enemy. I don't want to see you fail, but I will not bail you out ever again. If you lose this house, that's on you. If Emily drops out of school, that's on you. I will not be your backup plan anymore." The room was so quiet, I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Mom finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're behind on the mortgage. We were hoping." I held up a hand. "I know, and I'm not helping. You made your choice when you kicked me out. You wanted independence from me. You have it." Emily opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, then closed it again. "I hope you figure it out," I said, standing. "I really do. But this is the last time I come here unless something changes." I left the folder on the table and walked out. For the first time in months, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. And I knew deep down that whatever happened next, whether they saved the house or lost it, they would have to face the truth about what they had done. Because I had handed them the mirror, and whether they liked the reflection or not, they couldn't unsee it. Leaving that house was like stepping out of a storm and into clear air for the first time. For weeks, I didn't hear from them. No calls, no texts, I didn't know if they were angry, hurt, or just processing what I'd laid out for them. Part of me thought they might rally and figure things out, but part of me knew they wouldn't. Then 2 months later, I got the call. It was from Aunt Sarah. "Lucas," she said gently, "your parents' house is going into foreclosure. They missed their last 3 payments. The bank is starting proceedings." I sat there in silence for a long moment. I wasn't surprised, just heavy. "Thank you for letting me know," I said quietly. A week later, Mom texted me for the first time since the dinner. "Lucas, please, we're going to lose the house. We'll have nowhere to go. Emily is devastated. Can you help us just this once?" I stared at the screen, feeling the weight of the words. Then I typed back, "I already did for years. This is what you chose when you kicked me out." Her reply came within seconds. "You can't really mean that. This is your family." I took a deep breath before replying. "I do mean it, and I am your family. That's why I gave you everything I had for years. But you threw me out. You drained my savings. And you tried to make me feel guilty for walking away. This is not on me anymore." There was no response after that. The next few weeks were a whirlwind for them. I didn't watch from the sidelines with glee. I watched with a strange mix of sadness and closure. The for sale sign went up in the yard, then came down a month later when the bank took possession. They moved into a small rental across town. Emily posted online about having to drop out of school because of bad luck. I didn't correct her. Instead, I kept focusing on myself. I was promoted again at work, this time into a salaried position. My savings crossed a milestone I never thought I'd see. I traded in my old car for something reliable and new. My apartment, once bare, now felt like a real home, a place I wanted to come back to every night. Then one Sunday morning, there was a knock at my door. It was Dad. He looked older, somehow tired. He stood there for a long moment before speaking. "Can I come in?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. He sat at my small dining table, looking around the apartment like he was trying to understand how I'd built a life here without him. Finally, he said, "We lost the house." I nodded. "I know." He swallowed hard. I wanted to say, "You were right about everything. I thought I was doing what was best for this family, but I was just angry and proud, and I hurt you because of it." For a moment, I saw the man I had looked up to as a kid. Not the one who had slammed the door in my face, but the one who taught me how to ride a bike, who took me to my first baseball game. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said quietly, "but I wanted you to know I'm sorry." I let the silence sit for a moment. Then I said, "I forgive you, but things can't go back to how they were." He nodded. "I know." We sat there a little longer, not as father and son, but as 2 men who had both been through something and come out the other side. When he left, I stood at the window watching him go. For the first time, I didn't feel that tightness in my chest. That night, I pulled out the last page of my notebook, the one I had left blank on purpose, and wrote down one final line. "They tried to break me, but they built me instead." Then, I closed the notebook, set it on the shelf, and turned off the light. And for the first time in a long time, I slept peacefully. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My name's Aaron. I turned 50 last month. I manage a mid-sized logistics firm, been married for 27 years, and I've got 2 daughters. Clara, 24, and Morgan, 20. I used to think I had a pretty good read on people. I could sense tension in a boardroom before anyone spoke, sniff out a lie from 100 miles away. But when it came to my own family, I missed every sign. Or maybe I just didn't want to see them. The lead up to my 50th birthday was off, but I chalked it up to surprise party energy. You know the vibe. Hushed whispers when you enter the room, sudden shifts in conversation, locked phones, half smiles. Every time I asked what was going on, my wife, Lauren, would grin and say, "Just wait, this year will be unforgettable." Clara kept teasing, "You'll cry in a good way." Even Morgan, who normally couldn't keep a secret if her life depended on it, stayed oddly quiet. It had been a rough year. Layoffs at work, a minor surgery, my mom passing away in February. Honestly, I was looking forward to a little joy, something soft to land on. I hadn't had a real celebration in years. We always did more for the kids, which made sense, but I guess part of me hoped this milestone would be different, that maybe this one would be for me. The night before, Lauren kissed me goodnight early. "Get some rest," she said. "Big day tomorrow." I remember lying in bed imagining some surprise trip. Maybe something nostalgic back to Napa where we honeymooned, or a dinner with old friends. She'd mentioned reconnecting with a few. Whatever it was, it felt like something was coming. And for once, I let myself feel excited. I woke up alone. No breakfast, no card on the nightstand, no balloons, no happy birthday, no smell of pancakes or sound of the girls whispering down the hall. Instead, there was just an empty kitchen table, one used mug in the sink, and a canceled calendar invite on my phone. Birthday dinner at the Ridge. 6 p.m. status. Canceled by Lauren. No note, no explanation, just gone. I checked our shared family calendar. Morgan had an event marked blocked, and Clara's was simply marked busy. I opened our group chat. No messages. Nothing from Lauren either. Not even a happy birthday. I stared at my phone for a long time. Tried calling once, straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I'm not the type to beg for attention. By noon, I convinced myself it was still part of the surprise. Maybe they wanted me to think they forgot. Maybe I'd walk into the Ridge later and see all my friends gathered around with the cake and drinks. But 6 p.m. came and went, and I stayed home. I heated up leftover stir-fry. The rice was dry. The soy sauce had turned weirdly bitter. I sat at the kitchen island eating cold chicken and telling myself they were just late, that maybe they'd walk in any minute laughing about a wrong turn or a change in plans. Then at 7:11 p.m., my brother posted a selfie. It was a group shot, a dozen people crammed together under a warm pink sky. My brother had that smug gotcha grin on his face. His caption read, "Surprise trip with the real ones." And right behind him, smiling with wind in her hair, was my wife and both of my daughters. Even my best friend, Tom. He was the one holding the camera. They were on a beach. I recognized it immediately. Puerto Vallarta. I'd mentioned it offhand last fall, saying I'd love to go there someday. Looks like they took the hint. Just not with me. I didn't text. I didn't call. I just sat there staring at the screen until my phone dimmed and went black. Then I stood up, walked down the hallway to the basement, and pulled out the lockbox from under the stairs. Inside was a copy of the house deed, emergency cash, and most importantly, the backup keys and remote codes for all the smart locks in the house. I spent the rest of the night changing everything. Garage codes, alarm system, keypad entries. I even disabled the garage opener tied to Lauren's car. I took her spare off the key rack, walked outside, and tossed it into the storm drain down the street. I wasn't angry, not yet. Just numb. Like the world had gone quiet and I was the last one who hadn't realized it yet. The next morning, I turned off the phone. 2 days later, when I finally turned it back on, it buzzed like a hive had nested inside it. 48 missed calls, dozens of voicemails, over 100 emails. "Please just hear us out. You don't understand. It's not what you think." From Lauren, from Clara, from Morgan, even from Tom. But the one that stood out was from my brother. Subject line: "I warned them this was a bad idea." I didn't open it. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and sat down at the table. The same spot I'd sat on my birthday, alone with my stir-fry. And I finally felt something. Not sadness, not confusion. Resolve. Because whatever they were about to tell me, whatever flimsy excuse or half-hearted apology they had lined up, it wasn't going to be enough. Not this time. And that's when I decided what to do next. 3 weeks before my birthday, Tom invited me out for drinks after work. It wasn't unusual. We'd been grabbing Friday drinks since our 20s. But something was different this time. He seemed jittery, distracted. He kept glancing at his phone, barely touched his second drink, and dodged every question I asked about work. We'd both been in the trenches together when his last client went under, so silence wasn't normal. I figured maybe he was having trouble at home. His divorce last year was rough, and I knew he'd been trying to rebuild, job, dating, the works. But every time I mentioned his ex or anything remotely emotional, he'd shift the topic. Then toward the end of the night, he leaned back in his chair and gave me this weird half-smile. "You ever think," he said, "that people change when they think you're not looking?" I raised an eyebrow. "What's that supposed to mean?" He shrugged. "Just saying. Sometimes the people closest to you aren't who you think they are." I laughed it off at the time. Thought maybe he was projecting. But now I wonder if that was his guilt peeking through. Some last-ditch effort to give me a heads up without actually saying the words. The next odd moment came a few days later. I was walking past Lauren's office. Door cracked, her back turned. She was talking low on the phone. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but one word stopped me cold. "Transfers." Then a pause. "Yeah, but only after his birthday." "No, I don't want it to get messy." My heart kicked into a sprint. I stood there frozen. She always handled the family finances. She always said it was easier that way, and I never minded. I trusted her. We had a shared account, sure, but we also had several investment portfolios, real estate holdings, even some offshore savings from my dad's estate. I backed away before she could see me. That night, I logged into every account I could think of. Passwords had changed. Access denied. Some accounts I didn't even recognize. There was a new LLC registered under our names. I couldn't see its details. When I asked Lauren casually about it the next morning, just to test the waters, she waved it off with a breezy smile. "Oh, just some housekeeping, consolidating stuff before tax season." I wanted to believe her. I did. But something in her tone felt off. Scripted. Like she'd rehearsed it. Still, I let it go. I didn't want to be that guy. Paranoid, suspicious, the overthinking husband. So, I convinced myself I was being dramatic, that maybe she was planning a surprise. Something huge. Maybe this was all leading to the best birthday of my life. Except now I knew exactly what it was leading to. A surprise trip with the real ones. That selfie replayed in my head every time I closed my eyes. Lauren in a sundress she hadn't worn in years. Clara holding a cocktail she used to mock me for ordering. Morgan with her hands slung around Tom's shoulder like they were old pals. My best friend, my wife, my kids gone. I kept thinking about that phrase. The real ones. Like I was fake. Like I wasn't enough. I didn't tell anyone what I discovered. Not yet. Instead, I went to work like everything was normal. I smiled through meetings, handled logistics for a warehouse expansion, even helped one of my employees negotiate a higher salary. No one suspected a thing. But under the surface, I was building something. Quietly, methodically, I hired a private investigator, someone I'd worked with once before when a partner tried skimming off the top of a freight deal. She was good, subtle, thorough, and discreet. I gave her Lauren's name, then Tom's, then the girls, and I asked for everything. 2 days later, she sent me a zip file. I opened it on my work computer after hours. The folder was labeled Errand Family Activity. There were bank statements, screenshots, travel confirmations, meeting logs, and then there was the kicker. A recorded phone call between Lauren and someone listed only as attorney. Played it. "Yes. Once the transfer is complete, I'll be the majority shareholder," she said, clear as day. "He won't contest it. He doesn't even know what we've set up. After his birthday, it'll all be clean. The girls are on board. Tom's helping with the paperwork." My mouth went dry. This wasn't just about forgetting my birthday. This was a setup, a coup. They've been planning this for months, transferring ownership, moving funds, lining up legal protections, building a safety net without me. And worst of all, my own children were part of it. Every late night Lauren spent catching up on work. Every time Clara giggled and said I'd cry in a good way. Every phone Lauren swiped away when I walked in. They weren't keeping a surprise party. They were keeping a secret. And here's the part that really got me, Tom. The man who stood beside me at my wedding, who cried when Clara was born, who I once bailed out of jail after a bar fight in college. He was helping her take everything. I sat there at my desk, heart pounding, hands trembling, but not from sadness, from clarity. I'd seen betrayal before, but never this close, never wrapped in smiles and birthday wishes and fake warmth. They thought I was blind, that I'd go quietly, but they forgot something. This wasn't just my birthday. It was also the day I stopped trusting them. And the day I started planning my own kind of surprise, one they would never see coming. And just when I thought I had everything I needed, I received one final email from Morgan. Subject: Dad, please don't do anything until you hear my side. And when I opened it, I learned something that changed everything. The email was short, way too short for the magnitude of what was happening. No greeting, no emoji, just 10 sentences, 10 carefully chosen words that rearranged my entire understanding of the last few months. Dad, I didn't know what they were doing at first. They told me it was for your retirement. Said you were tired. Said you'd thank them. I only found out the truth 2 days ago. I tried to tell Mom, but she shut me down. Clara doesn't know I'm messaging you. Please don't answer. Not yet. But don't sign anything. Check the brown box under your side of the bed. I love you. That last line. That was what cracked me. I reread it over and over. I wanted to believe her. I needed to. Morgan had always been closer to her mom. More passive, less confrontational. She didn't like drama, but she also wasn't a liar. Not with me. Still, a part of me resisted because if Morgan was telling the truth, that meant she was stuck in the middle of something she couldn't control. That she might have been dragged along in their mess out of fear or obligation. Or maybe, worst of all, guilt. I stood up from my desk and walked into the bedroom. The bed hadn't been made since Lauren left. Her side was still faintly scented with her lavender lotion. I didn't linger. I crouched down and reached beneath the frame, fingers brushing dust and loose receipts and then cardboard. A small brown shoebox, unmarked, untapped, light. Inside were documents, dozens of them. Printed emails, handwritten notes, a few USB drives, and a small black leather planner, Morgan's from 2 years ago. I flipped through it absently, not expecting much, until I reached the back pages. Folded and shoved into the pocket were 2 letters. One was from Lauren to someone named Richard, her attorney. It was a typed draft with edits in red ink. The title: Request to Initiate Ownership Reassignment Proceedings. The language was cold, clinical, like she was filing a work transfer, not tearing apart her husband's life. It detailed the process of acquiring controlling interest in the logistics firm, my firm. Said it would optimize family security long-term, especially if Aaron becomes emotionally unstable or combative. I sat down slowly. My stomach turned. She was painting me as a risk before anything had even happened. The second letter was from Morgan, dated 2 days before the trip. Handwritten. Mom said it's not a betrayal, that it's protection. But I see how she looks when she talks about the company. It's not about protecting you. It's about power, about control. I thought she was doing it for the family, but I was wrong. She's been manipulating Clara, too, using her job offer as leverage. And Tom, he's not just helping her with legal stuff. They've been seeing each other. I think it's been months. I tried to talk to Clara, but she wouldn't listen. I feel like I'm watching a train crash in slow motion. The last line was underlined twice. I don't know what to do, Dad, but I don't want to be part of this. I sat there for a long time, just holding that letter. My breathing felt shallow. The walls seemed smaller. It wasn't just betrayal, it was strategy. They were planning a hostile takeover of my life and dressing it up as a beach vacation. And Tom with Lauren, that hit me like a slap. No warning, just that one sickening sentence in Morgan's letter, and suddenly everything made sense. The distance, the tension, the way he avoided eye contact when Lauren was around, the weird timing of his divorce. It all came together. This wasn't a last-minute betrayal. This was orchestrated. But they hadn't accounted for Morgan. And they sure as hell didn't expect me to fight back. I pulled out one of the USB drives from the box and plugged it into my laptop. Inside were several folders, bank logs, email chains, LLC agreements. Morgan must have been collecting this for weeks, maybe months, maybe ever since she noticed the shift in Clara. Maybe since she heard Lauren say the word transfers on a call. Every document was a piece of the puzzle. Hidden accounts, new company names, wire transfers that funneled money out of joint holdings into private ones held only in Lauren's name. There was even an updated will draft Lauren had drawn up without my signature and a spreadsheet titled Asset Split Projection Q3. like I was a balance sheet to be optimized. I closed the laptop, walked to the window, stared out at the yard, empty and still. That's when the doorbell rang. I didn't answer it right away. I stood there for a minute, watching the shadow behind the frosted glass. Then I walked over and opened it. Standing there, clutching a small duffel bag and wearing a hoodie pulled tight over her face, was Morgan. Her eyes were red, no makeup, no smile. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, stepped aside. She walked past me, paused in the foyer, and looked around like she expected everything to collapse. "I didn't go," she said, turning back. "I was supposed to. I packed, got in the car, but when we hit the highway, I told them I forgot something and asked to be dropped off at campus. Said I'd Uber to the airport later." She swallowed hard. They didn't even question it. I led her into the kitchen, poured her some water. She didn't drink it. "I'm sorry," she said finally. I was locked on the floor. I didn't know how far it had gone. Not until I saw the contracts in the emails. I thought it was just legal stuff, retirement stuff. But then Clara showed me the will and I saw how they were moving the money. That's when I started copying everything, hiding things. She pulled her phone from her pocket and slid it across the table. "It's all backed up here, too, in case anything happens." I looked at her, my daughter, the only one who hadn't turned on me, and something shifted in my chest. Not just the ache of betrayal, but the faintest flicker of hope. "Why now?" I asked. "Why come to me?" She looked up. Her eyes were sharp, determined. She wasn't a little girl anymore. "Because I thought I was going crazy. But I'm not. They are. And if you're going to fight back, you're going to need help." I nodded slowly. Then I opened my laptop and started drafting the first move of my plan. But just as we were reviewing one of the legal documents, Morgan's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, froze, then turned the screen to me. It was a text from Clara. "Dad knows. Abort the plan. Don't come back." And underneath it, a picture of our house taken from the street tonight. And the headlights weren't turning off. They were pulling into the driveway. Morgan's fingers trembled as she locked her phone. The blood drained from her face, and for a moment, she didn't move, just sat frozen in the kitchen chair, staring at the front door like it was about to be kicked in. I looked out the window. There it was, a dark SUV idling at the curb, headlights still on. I couldn't see who was inside, but I didn't need to. I already knew. They hadn't waited for an explanation. They weren't coming back to apologize. Clara had sent the message, and now Lauren was here. Maybe with her, maybe with Tom. They didn't expect Morgan to switch sides, and now they were scrambling, probably to do damage control or worse. I stood up, calm and deliberate, and quietly turned off the kitchen lights, then the hallway, the living room. Within seconds, the house was dark. I motioned to Morgan to stay quiet, and she followed as I led her down the hallway, past the den into the garage. I hit the side panel and killed the power to the garage door just in case. We slipped into the basement. My office was down there, but more importantly, so was my backup setup. Years of running a business taught me to always have fail-safes, emergency Wi-Fi router, hidden camera feed, battery-operated backup power. I clicked on the security monitors. One camera caught Lauren stepping out of the SUV, wearing a trench coat and looking visibly agitated. Clara stayed in the passenger seat. She was on the phone, pacing, probably trying to reach Morgan again. Tom wasn't with them. I wasn't sure if that was good or bad. Lauren walked up to the porch and rang the doorbell. No knock, no yelling. She wasn't going for drama. Not yet. This was recon. She wanted to know if I was still home, if I'd seen anything, if Morgan had told me. She waited for 30 seconds, then pulled out her phone. A moment later, mine buzzed upstairs. She tried again. Buzz again. Buzz. Finally, she knocked 3 times. Hard. Morgan whispered, "She thinks we don't know." I nodded. "Let's keep it that way for now." We watched for another minute as Lauren paced the porch. Eventually, she turned back toward the SUV, talking into her phone. Clara rolled down the window and shouted something I couldn't hear. Then, they both got in and drove off. Not far, just around the corner. I knew that street. It had a cul-de-sac and one of the better views of our house. They weren't leaving. They were watching. I exhaled slowly. Then, I opened the folder labeled LLC Agreements and started sorting documents. I need you to read something, I told Morgan. Together, we reviewed every paper she'd collected. She had copies of at least 6 shell company filings, all tied back to Lauren's maiden name. She transferred portions of our investments into them over the last 8 months. One of the accounts was structured as a blind trust under the guise of long-term college funding. Ironically, Clara's name was on that one. The real kicker, though, was in a power of attorney document Lauren had drafted and forged. It had my signature, but I never signed it. She'd used it to authorize one of the major transfers into her LLC just a week prior to my birthday. That was enough. Enough to go to the bank, enough to file charges, enough to destroy everything they had built on the illusion that I was too trusting, too tired, or too distracted to notice. But I wasn't going to file charges. Not yet. I had something better in mind. The next morning, Morgan and I visited the office. I hadn't told anyone what was going on. Not the board, not the execs, not even my assistant of 8 years. But they knew something was different when I walked in with a briefcase full of documents and a fire in my step. Morgan waited in the lobby while I held an emergency executive meeting. We sat around the oak table. I laid it all out. Quietly, calmly, I handed over the proof. The forged documents, the bank transfers, the attempt to reassign company ownership behind my back. Then I said 5 words that made the room fall silent. I'm selling my majority stake. They thought I was bluffing. I wasn't. 3 weeks earlier, before any of this reached the surface, I'd had a conversation with an international logistics group looking to expand into our region. I hadn't considered it seriously at the time, but now I called their CEO personally. We negotiated for 8 hours straight. I structured the deal so cleanly, so thoroughly that by the end of it, they were begging for my signature. I sold the company for nearly double its valuation. Then, with the proceeds already held in escrow, I transferred 10% of the final sum, 7 figures, to a new trust, one with Morgan as the sole beneficiary. The rest I froze. Every account tied to Clara and Lauren's names was shut down. The blind trust dissolved. The college fund liquidated. I even pulled the prepaid lease on Clara's downtown apartment. It was in my name anyway. They thought they were stealing from me. They didn't realize I'd already moved everything. Then came the final blow. The day after the sale, I filed for divorce. Lauren was served at her law office in public during lunch. Clara came home that night to find all her belongings boxed neatly on the front porch. I wasn't cruel. I didn't destroy anything. I even taped a note to the top box. You wanted independence. Now you have it. Tom? I sent him a single text. Glad you enjoyed the company. It's gone now. He didn't reply. Morgan stayed with me for a few weeks. We rebuilt things slowly, carefully. She hadn't been perfect, and she didn't pretend to be, but she'd done the right thing in the end. She came to me when it counted. She didn't just save me from their plan. She gave me clarity I hadn't had in years. We took a trip together later that spring, just the 2 of us. We went to the coast, ate street food, rented bikes, talked like we used to when she was 10 and thought I hung the moon. One night, while watching the sun sink into the water, she turned to me and asked, "Do you ever miss them?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "I miss who I thought they were, not who they turned out to be." She nodded. Me too. When we came back, I bought a new house, something smaller, quieter. I started writing again. Nothing serious, just journals, short fiction, some essays. I stopped checking their social media. I stopped responding to the occasional message from extended family asking what really happened, because I didn't owe them the truth. They'd all seen the photo. They all knew what side they picked, and now they could live with it. The last message I ever got from Lauren was an email. No subject, just a line of text. Was it really worth it? I stared at it for a while. Then I clicked reply and wrote every. Now on to the next story. Story 7. At dinner, my father smirked. Your sister's the new owner of this property. You have 30 hours to get your things out. I smiled calmly, but when she tried to collect the keys, The bank notified her of the overdue payments I'd quietly stopped covering months ago. She nearly collapsed. I should have known something was off when Dad set the table like it was Thanksgiving and not just a random Tuesday. He even pulled out the good silverware, the ones Mom only used when she thought someone important might show up. But it was just us. Or maybe they thought I was the important one this time. That was their first mistake. I hadn't been back to the house since Grandpa died. Almost a year. I stayed away on purpose. There was no drama I missed. Nostalgia pulling me back. Just obligation. My lawyer called and said I needed to sign a few final documents in person to close the last chapter of the estate. I didn't even want to eat with them, but Dad insisted. Said it was the least I could do. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. The house looked exactly like I remembered. Pristine, polished, empty of warmth. Mom had kept it like a museum ever since Grandpa passed. But there were new touches. Claire's touches. A glass sculpture in the foyer. Some ridiculous faux marble mirror in the hallway. Scented candles that smelled like overpriced hotels. And the new Lexus in the driveway. She didn't even park in the street like a guest anymore. Dinner was awkward from the first minute. Claire and Darren sat on the far side of the table like they owned the place. Mom kept talking about how grown-up Claire was now, how she had such a good head for business. Dad chimed in occasionally, but mostly stared at me with that look he always wore when he was about to lecture me. I didn't engage. I listened. I waited. The meat was dry. The mashed potatoes were lumpy. The tension was undercooked. Then Dad folded his napkin and said it. Your sister's the new owner of this property. You have 30 hours to get your things out. That was it. No build-up, no apology, no discussion. Claire didn't even pretend to be surprised. She just gave me that tight-lipped smile she used to wear when we were kids, and she'd snitch on me to Mom and get away with it. Darren didn't say anything, just raised his glass like they'd finally won something. I smiled, calm, casual. Like I didn't just watch 3 people try to erase me from my own history. Because here's the thing. Grandpa didn't trust any of them. Not Dad, not Mom, definitely not Claire. That's why he left everything to me. The house, the land, the savings, all of it. He knew I'd protect it. And for a while I did. I paid the taxes. I managed the mortgage. Quietly handled the small debts he left behind. Nobody even noticed because that's how they treated me. Like I didn't exist unless they needed something. Last year, Claire came to me crying, saying she wanted to help out with the property. Said she wanted to be more involved, that she finally appreciated the family legacy. I knew she was lying, but I played along. I let her think she was manipulating me, signed a few things, gave her just enough access to feel powerful. What she didn't know was that the moment she started spending Grandpa's money like it was hers, I started pulling out quietly. One by one, I stopped covering the payments, let the balances slip, watched the red letters pile up behind the scenes, and I waited. I waited for the exact moment she'd think she won. That moment was now, and dinner was just getting started. The next morning, Claire dressed like a CEO for the bank meeting she thought would solidify her new beginning. She wore heels she couldn't walk in and a white blazer that still had the tag tucked under the sleeve. I could picture the way she probably strutted into that place like it was some victory lap, Darren walking a step behind her like her personal assistant, soaking in the imagined glow of sudden wealth. They didn't tell me they were going. I only knew because I'd already arranged it. A week before that dinner, I had a quiet conversation with the bank. I informed them that, as of the following month, I would no longer be covering the costs associated with the property. I revoked all automatic payments, canceled the maintenance contracts, and pulled back the umbrella insurance plan I'd kept under my name. Mainly because I knew Claire would never think to get one. She didn't even know what half those things were. She saw a house and thought it came free of responsibility, like it just existed, handed down from heaven. But Grandpa didn't leave her a miracle. He left me a structure built over 60 years ago with a cracked foundation, a roof that needed replacing, and a mountain of deferred costs I'd been silently managing since he passed. That house wasn't a prize, who was a project, and I'd held it together for almost a year with no thanks from anyone. So, when Claire walked into the bank that morning expecting a ribbon-cutting ceremony, what she got instead was a file full of overdue payment notices, insurance, taxes, small liens tied to old repairs, and a warning that unless the balance of nearly $49,000 was settled immediately, the house would be placed under review for foreclosure proceedings. Darren apparently started arguing on the spot. He tried to convince the woman at the desk that it was all a mistake, that everything was taken care of. Claire, I heard, went dead quiet. I got the story in pieces from the lawyer, from a friend at the bank, and eventually from the panic string of missed calls and texts that started pouring in that afternoon. Claire called 4 times. Darren texted something snide, trying to play tough. My favorite was Mom's voicemail. Bella, I don't know what's going on, but your sister's at the bank and they're saying things that don't make sense. Can you call me back? No concern, no warmth, just a mother calling because her golden child was upset and she needed someone to clean it up. I didn't return the call. That evening, Claire finally got through to me. She didn't even say hello, just went straight into it, accusing me of setting her up, of hiding the real condition of the house, of letting her take the fall. I didn't argue. I just reminded her she'd wanted ownership. She'd pushed for it. She'd insisted. And she'd done it with Dad's help, completely behind my back. If she didn't understand what ownership meant, that wasn't my problem. She hung up. That night, Claire posted a blurry picture of a glass of wine on Instagram with some caption about betrayal and snakes in the grass. Comments flooded in, friends telling her to stay strong, strangers giving her advice. Meanwhile, the inbox from the county tax office was still flagged red. The overdue bills were still mounting. The insurance lapse notice was set to trigger a fine within 48 hours. By the next morning, my father called. He wasn't yelling yet, but the tone had shifted. It was the sound of a man who realized something might be spiraling out of his control. He asked me if there was any way I could pause things, maybe help stabilize the situation for now. I didn't bother pretending to think it over. I told him flatly that I wasn't involved anymore. His silence lasted a full 10 seconds before he said, "But this was your grandfather's home." Exactly. And I knew what Grandpa would have said if he saw what they were doing to it. Claire thought she'd snatched the crown. But what she inherited wasn't a throne. It was a collapsing kingdom with rotten walls and debt woven into every corner. And I wasn't going to be the one patching it up anymore. That was her job now, and she hadn't even seen the worst of it yet. By the end of that week, the panic had fully settled into their bones. Claire had gone from posting curated brunch photos to completely disappearing online. Darren's Facebook changed from obnoxious motivational quotes to total silence. And I started hearing from extended family members, people I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly reaching out with weirdly warm messages. Aunt Cheryl texted saying we should grab coffee soon. Uncle Leo sent a 2-line email asking how I'd been holding up. No one mentioned the house, but I knew why they were circling. Word had spread. Claire had told them she was the new owner of Grandpa's estate. She must have bragged endlessly before that bank meeting because now that the truth was leaking, everyone wanted to know what was really happening. But nobody asked directly. They just watched, waited, hoping to be included in whatever they thought was next. The worst of it hit when the contractor showed up. Back when Grandpa was still alive, he'd hired a local guy named Mark to do some foundation work. Halfway through the job, Grandpa had a medical emergency, and I ended up sorting out the paperwork. We'd worked out a payment plan, and I had been quietly sending monthly checks ever since. When I stopped, 3 months before the dinner, Mark gave it a bit of time before coming to collect. And collect he did. He knocked on the front door on a Wednesday afternoon. Claire answered. I wasn't there obviously, but I got the full story later from a neighbor who still liked me more than the rest of my family. Said Mark showed up with paperwork, copies of invoices, and a firm reminder that there was still over $14,000 owed on structural work that had already been done. Darren tried to get loud, tried to push him off the property, but Mark was patient. He didn't yell. He just handed them the papers and said he'd be filing the lien by the end of the week. That night, Mom called me again. She didn't ask how I was. Didn't ask if I was busy. She just launched into it, saying she didn't know about this contractor. That Grandpa must have made some kind of mistake that I had to have known. Why didn't you tell us? I asked her the same thing. Why didn't you ask me anything when you helped Claire take the house? She didn't answer. Meanwhile, Claire was drowning. With every new financial letter, every unexpected invoice, her little empire started crumbling. She didn't have the money to cover the debt and Darren's business. Some sketchy crypto-flavored nonsense had already been flailing. They started making calls. Darren called his dad. Claire called a college friend who once worked at a real estate office. Mom called her cousin in Florida who used to be a mortgage broker. Nobody wanted to help. Dad was the last to break. When he called me that Friday night, he wasn't angry anymore. He sounded tired. Said maybe this was all a misunderstanding. Asked if we could meet. I said no. I wasn't being cruel. I just didn't see the point. He'd picked his side months ago. He hung up without saying goodbye. By the end of the week, Claire was on the verge of losing the house entirely. The bank had started the paperwork. The lien was filed, and she still hadn't paid the property taxes, which meant the county was now involved. All of it had come crashing down faster than I expected. And yet, they still hadn't figured out the full extent of what was coming. They hadn't even opened the letters from the HOA yet. The letter from the HOA had been sitting unopened for weeks. Mixed in with pizza coupons and overdue utility bills, Claire hadn't even noticed it. That's how careless things had gotten. She didn't open any mail unless it looked like a check or a threat. But when she finally did, when her hands finally tore through that generic white envelope, everything she'd been trying to keep from collapsing came crashing down in a whole new way. The letter was brief but brutal. 3 violations. Unauthorized structure in the backyard, non-compliant electrical modifications, and failure to submit any paperwork for architectural review. The violations were tied to Darren's latest idea of adding value to the property. A hideous hot tub he bought secondhand off some guy in a Facebook group, installed it himself with 0 permits, ran power from an outdoor outlet using some sketchy extension cords, and didn't tell a soul. Claire knew, of course. He just thought nobody would care, that the HOA was lazy or wouldn't notice. They noticed. The fine was already over $3,200. And if they didn't correct everything, remove the hot tub, pull out the concrete base Darren poured without measuring, and restore the lawn to its original state, the HOA would begin formal legal proceedings. Baker, the HOA board president, was the same woman Claire insulted at a neighborhood event 2 months ago. Loudly publicly called her tacky for wearing off-brand shoes. I found all of this out from my old neighbor, Mrs. Jensen, who still called me occasionally to check in. She'd always liked me better than the rest of the family. She said it was obvious Claire and Darren were in over their heads, and she mentioned that someone had been sneaking around the backyard with a flashlight at night, probably the HOA's hired inspector. By the time Claire reached out to me again, her voice was quieter. Not calm, defeated. She didn't yell this time. She didn't accuse me of betrayal or call me a snake. She just asked if we could meet. Said she wanted to talk about the house, that she was trying to figure out a solution. I agreed to meet her. I was curious what rock bottom sounded like. She chose a cafe just outside town, one of those trendy spots with recycled wood counters and slow drip coffee. I got there 10 minutes early. She was already waiting. Hoodie, messy hair, no jewelry. Her eyes looked different, smaller, like they'd been crying for days. We sat down and she didn't waste time. She started talking like someone confessing at a police station. Told me the whole story. The financial mess, the liens, the HOA fines, and then something I didn't expect at all. He told me about the fund. Apparently, Grandpa had set up a second account years ago, a separate maintenance fund tied to the house, a cushion in case anything major happened. Only a few people knew about it. I didn't, but Claire found out through Dad. She convinced him to help her access it, claiming she needed it to fix a few things. In truth, she drained it dry within 2 months. A $6,000 shopping spree in LA. Alexis. A surprise birthday vacation to Tulum for one of her influencer friends. Spa memberships, designer clothes she couldn't pronounce. All paid for with money Grandpa set aside to keep the house standing. I sat there not saying much. Let her get it all out. She didn't cry, but she looked like someone who'd just realized the walls were actually closing in. And for once, there was no one left to blame. She said the words eventually, "Do you want the house back?" She said she'd sign it over. Said she couldn't handle it. Darren was already pulling away, staying out late, talking about maybe getting a fresh start somewhere else. My parents had gone radio silent after the HOA letter. The people who had backed her the hardest were now the same ones demanding answers. They wanted her to fix everything, to come up with the money to undo all the mess. But Claire didn't have anything left. No cash, no savings, no plan. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just told her I'd think about it. But here's what I didn't tell her. I already knew about the second fund. I found out 2 weeks ago. The bank flagged it when they were trying to trace payment history on the property. I'd already seen the list of transactions. Knew what she spent, where, and when. Knew exactly when Darren's name started showing up on joint purchases. I'd just been waiting to see if she'd admit it. He finally did. But what she didn't know, what no one knew, was that Grandpa left a third account. One that Claire didn't touch because it wasn't in any paperwork. It wasn't tied to the house. It was left under my name only with one specific instruction handwritten in a letter I received 3 months after his death. You'll know when it's time. And it was time. I waited a week before responding to Claire. Not out of spite. There was just no rush. She thought she was dangling the house in front of me like a peace offering. But in reality, she was offering to dump a burning ship into my lap and run. I let her sit in that silence. Let her wonder if I was going to swoop in and save her from the mess she created. During that week, things escalated fast. The bank filed their final notice. Darren tried to contest the lien from the contractor, failed. The HOA added another $900 in fines. I heard from Mrs. Jensen that Darren had been seen loading boxes into the back of a rented U-Haul in the middle of the night. She said it looked like he was taking electronics, tools, and what she thought was one of the vintage dressers from Grandpa's old room. Claire was still living in the house. Oh no, my parents had finally stopped pretending. Mom sent me a single text. We didn't know everything. She lied to us too. Dad never reached out at all. I knew they were upset. Mostly because Claire had promised them the house would be theirs to grow old in. She even offered to build them a guest suite once renovations started. That was when she thought the inheritance fund was infinite, when she still believed money was just a matter of asking hard enough. But now she was broke. They were furious, and nobody was speaking to anyone. I showed up on a Sunday morning, didn't call ahead, just drove up the long driveway in my beat-up Honda, parked behind the Lexus that hadn't moved in 5 days, and rang the doorbell. Claire answered in pajamas. Her hair was greasy. Her eyes had that hollow look of someone who hadn't slept. I asked if I could take a walk through the house. She didn't stop me. The living room was a wreck. Empty wine bottles, mail everywhere, dust settling in corners. The kitchen was worse. Food in the sink, ants near the fridge. The hot tub in the backyard was still there, half drained and covered with a tarp weighed down by bricks. Darren's idea of problem solving. When I got to Grandpa's old study, I stopped. It was exactly how he left it except for the smell. A faint trace of mildew. She hadn't touched anything. Probably didn't know what half the stuff in there was. His books, his collection of coins, his journals, and the old safe tucked behind the cabinet. The one Claire didn't even know existed. I opened it. Inside were some documents, a few letters, and a flash drive. I'd already gone through all of it before. That's how I found out about the third account. After Grandpa passed, I received a letter from a private law office, not the one Claire used. This was his own, separate from the family's usual legal contacts. The letter explained that he had created a separate fund accessible only by me, intended for the eventual restoration or repossession of the house. It had sat untouched for nearly a year, quietly gaining interest. And now it was enough to cover everything, the liens, the taxes, even the HOA violations. I could clean the slate. But first, I needed Claire gone. I turned to her in the doorway, told her I'd take the house. She didn't even argue, just nodded. Said she'd be out by the end of the week. I didn't believe her, and I was right. That night, I got a call from Mrs. Jensen. She saw Claire screaming at my mom in the driveway. Something about money, about betrayal. Then Darren showed up. More yelling. Boxes thrown. Neighbors started filming. Finally, the cops came, not to arrest anyone, but to stop the noise. 2 days later, Claire was gone. But what she left behind was worse than I imagined. Trash in every room. broken cabinet doors, a smashed mirror in the hallway, one of Grandpa's old chairs torn at the arm like someone had tried to drag it and gave up halfway. And in the garage, an old mattress covered in ash. Looked like someone had been smoking there for weeks. She left the house, but not before trying to ruin it. Didn't matter because now it was mine again. And she had no idea that I already had the money to bring it back. They left on a Thursday. No fanfare, no dramatic exit, just gone. Claire didn't call or even knock on my door to hand over the keys. Instead, she texted me 3 photos. One of the front hall, one of the kitchen, and one of the living room with a single word under it. Done. No punctuation, no apology. I stared at it for a moment, then closed the message and didn't reply. When I pulled up to the house later that evening, the Lexus was gone. The blinds were crooked in every window. A black trash bag was torn open on the porch as if someone had tried to drag it out and gave up halfway. They left the front door unlocked. The first thing I noticed when I stepped inside was the air. Stale, humid, and sour. Somewhere between old laundry and spilled alcohol. It didn't smell like a home. It smelled like what was left after a party no one cleaned up. Lights were still on in half the rooms. Ceiling fans spinning lazily. Cabinet doors open like they'd packed in a rush. I didn't expect it to be spotless, but I didn't expect this either. Every room had damage. Nothing too expensive, just intentional. Petty. Light switches with cracked covers. A cigarette burn in the upstairs carpet. Someone had taken a marker to the inside of one of the kitchen drawers and scrolled something I didn't bother reading. And in the garage, a busted television with shattered glass around it next to what looked like Darren's old weights, left behind like an afterthought. In the study, one of Grandpa's framed certificates was lying on the floor, the glass cracked. I picked it up and set it back on the shelf. I didn't cry. I didn't feel anger or satisfaction, just stillness. The kind that settles after the storm finally moves on. I spent 3 days cleaning alone. No help. I didn't ask anyone to come by. I filled 11 trash bags. Hired a junk removal guy who showed up late, then tried to flirt with me while tossing out moldy furniture. I power washed the back patio, ripped out the tarp-covered hot tub, and left it in pieces at the curb. I found Darren's receipts stuffed in a kitchen drawer. Credit card statements, weird supplements, expensive shoes he never wore. Claire's closet was nearly empty except for a crushed box labeled winter stuff, which was just a pile of scarves and a half-used candle. They hadn't just abandoned the house. They tried to humiliate it, to stain it. Like, if they couldn't keep it, then it shouldn't be worth keeping. But what they didn't know was that this house wasn't just a building to me. It was every summer night I spent here when I was little, listening to Grandpa talk about how things were built right back in his day. It was the creak in the hallway that always meant he was up early. The drawer that stuck in the kitchen, the spot on the porch where the paint always chipped no matter how many times he repainted it. They didn't destroy anything important. They couldn't because the house still stood. And mine. That Monday, I reopened the file Grandpa left behind. The one he tucked in his private safe labeled Rebuild. I read through every page, notes, sketches, lists of repairs, savings accounts, contacts he trusted. He had it all laid out like a plan for a future he wasn't going to see, but hoped I would. And at the bottom of that file, I found something else. A letter, one I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't long. If they try to take this house, let them. People like that never hold on to things for long. They don't know how. And when they let go, you'll be here like I always knew you would be. I read it twice, folded it neatly, and put it back. By the weekend, I had contractors lined up. The quiet kind, local guys, people Grandpa had worked with before. I'd already moved into his old room. The desk, the books, the chair. I wasn't changing it. Not yet. The house needed work, but it had a heartbeat again. The bad energy had left with the moving trucks. I never spoke to Claire again. My parents didn't come around either. I think they were too embarrassed, too angry, or maybe just afraid I'd say what we all knew. I warned them. I warned all of them. But I didn't need to say anything. I had the house. They had nothing. And I didn't have to lift a finger to take it back. They handed it over the moment they believed it was theirs. The first update. A few weeks passed. The house was mine again, inside and out. The contractors came through like clockwork, patched the drywall, replaced the busted tiles in the kitchen, removed the old carpeting upstairs, and cleaned out the vents, which hadn't been touched in years. The smell finally left. I replaced the blinds, painted over the scuffs, and even fixed the porch swing Grandpa built. For the first time since he died, it felt like something was finally moving forward. I didn't post about it, didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I kept it quiet, but news still got out. One morning, I was outside repainting the fence when Mrs. Jensen came by with a coffee and a soft smile. She said she heard Claire had moved in with one of Darren's friends across town. Darren was now couch surfing, blaming Claire for everything. She also said something that stopped me mid-stroke with the brush. Apparently, my father had tried to sue Claire. He wanted to recoup some of the money he'd loaned her for the Lexus and the renovations that never happened. My mother had cut contact with both of them after that. Claire blocked them, and now no one in the family was speaking. They had imploded. But the surprise came 2 days later in a manila envelope delivered by courier. At first I thought it was more junk. Maybe something left over from the bank. But it wasn't. It was from Grandpa's old law firm. Inside was a final document I hadn't expected. Apparently the third account, the one Grandpa left under my name, had a clause. If the house returned to my control and all debts were cleared, the remainder of the account would convert to a private inheritance fund. Not for repairs. For me, it was substantial, much more than I expected. He hadn't just planned for me to take back the house. He'd planned for me to live, really live once I did. Travel if I wanted, invest, build something of my own. No more fighting to hold the house together. No more bailing anyone out. That was the final part of the plan. He trusted me to protect the house, but he never intended it to be my prison. He just needed to make sure it ended up in the right hands, and now it had. I stood on the back porch that evening with a glass of wine, watching the sun set through the trees Grandpa planted 50 years ago. The yard was quiet except for the faint sound of wind chimes he'd hung from the oak outback. They hadn't rung in a long time, but now with the house silent and still, they did. Not loud, just enough. Enough to remind me that not everything has to be taken by force. Some things find their way back to you the way they were always meant to. Slowly, quietly, and completely. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Well, that was a disaster, but believe it or not, this next one might be even worse. My parents laughed at my online business for years until I made $1.2 million and left their golden girl speechless at her own graduation party. My name is Aiden. I'm 31. And if there's one thing I've learned about family, it's that they'll support you the most unless your success makes them uncomfortable. I never took the standard route. While the majority of my relatives were away at university studying law, medicine, or whatever else would get them a LinkedIn badge and parental bragging rights, I was holed up in my childhood bedroom creating an e-commerce brand out of thin air. Initially, the company only sold bespoke phone cases, then t-shirts, then it snowballed. While they were submitting resumes and praying for internships, I was doing taxes for an LLC and managing 6 figures of merchandise. But according to my mother, I was still between jobs. That's how I was presented at weddings and reunions. This is Aiden. He's figuring things out. As if my company didn't exist until someone in a suit claimed it did. The graduation celebration that broke the camel's back was for Sophia, my cousin. She was 23, had just graduated from a prominent institution with a degree in international relations, and was the family's golden girl. You know the type. Class president, knows 3 languages, volunteers at shelters, and somehow looks like a Disney princess in every shot. Growing up, I never had any problems with her. To be honest, we were civil. Not particularly close, but yet not antagonistic. But Sophia always had this air about her, as if she wanted everyone to clap at the end of each phrase. Her parents, my aunt and uncle, fueled it. Every minor accomplishment was celebrated with a party, a framed award, a group SMS, and a Facebook album titled Sophia's Big Moment. When I received the invitation to her graduation celebration, I knew what to expect. A catered outdoor affair at their suburban home, complete with string lights, champagne, and an exorbitant tent rental. What I didn't foresee was the role I would be assigned. When I arrived, I drove up a little early to avoid the usual bustle, only to be met by Aunt Cara, Sophia's mother, waving a neon vest as if I just clocked in for work. That's fantastic, Aiden. We hoped you could assist with the parking situation. We have cars backing up down the street. No, hello. There was no thanks for coming. Just a vest, a walkie-talkie, and a pat on the back as if I were a college freshman working valet on weekends. I blinked at her. I am not working at the party, Kara. I came to celebrate. She laughed as if I had told a joke. Please help us out for an hour or so. You're skilled at logistics, correct? Your small internet thing. I should have gone away then. I should have given her the vest and told her no. But something in me, probably my cursed familial loyalty, made me accept it. I spent the first 90 minutes of the party waving SUVs into grass patches and assisting elderly relatives with their walkers over difficult terrain. Nobody relieved me. Nobody brought me a drink. When I eventually sat down at one of the fold-out tables in the rear, sweaty and dusty, the genuine celebration had already begun. There was a large banner across the yard that read, "Congrats, Sophia," in sparkling gold. A red ribbon was placed over the driveway gate, which appeared to be disguising a brand new Kia Soul. Guests gathered around the cake table to sip beverages and dine. My mother, who was seated front and center, gave me a half-hearted wave as if she had raised Sophia herself. I noticed my name scrolled on a paper place card hidden beneath a beautiful fern in the buffet line, distant from the main tables. Sophia was shining. She wore a white outfit that reflected light with every movement, and she moved from table to table as if she were running for office. When a microphone was delivered to her, she tapped it dramatically before laughing. "I just wanted to thank everyone for coming," she said, raising her champagne flute. "It means so much to be surrounded by people who value hard work and real education, especially in a time where it's so easy to get distracted by online hobbies." She smiled straight at me. The pause was intentional. The delivery was razor sharp. And how did they react? Laughter. Actual laughing. My uncle snorted. My cousin Jason spit out a sip from his drink. Even my mother gave a tight, ashamed smile, as if she had been caught trying not to laugh, but couldn't stop herself. I felt heat rising up my neck. I glanced at the condensation pouring down my untouched drink, trying not to react. "Not yet," Sophia continued, oblivious or perhaps just brave. "Some of us spent 4 years pursuing a degree that signifies something. Sorry, not sorry." More laughs. She clinked glasses with a few close guests before returning the microphone like a teen drama, dropped the mic scene. My mother looked across at me, gave a slight shrug, and said she didn't mean it. The fact is, I didn't care about the car. I didn't care about the banner, the speech, or the fact that every photo was taken with me cropped out in the backdrop, standing by the hedge like a forgotten waiter. What hurt was the years of silent dismissals, smirks when I attempted to describe my job. My own mother would skip over my updates to discuss which of Sophia's lecturers formerly worked for the State Department. But as I sat there with dust on my sneakers and a drink in my hand, something inside me moved. I waited until the last toast was given, the clapping subsided, and people began to go toward the dance floor where a Bluetooth speaker was playing top 40 songs. I stood up, brushed off my clothes, and made my way up to the main table where Sophia and her friends were posing for photos next to the car, still high from the ovation. "Hey, Sophia," I said casually, loud enough for the close audience to hear. She paused mid-laugh, evidently not expecting me to reply. "Yeah?" she questioned, her eyes narrowing. I raised my glass and grinned. "Just wanted to say congrats. It really must feel great knowing your degree got you here. And it's awesome that your family supports you so much." I took a large sip. My little online hobby just cleared $1.2 million this year. "But hey, nice Kia." Silence. Sophia's smile froze. Someone behind her dropped a fork. My uncle's mouth dropped open. My mother blinked twice as if she couldn't process the words. I did not wait for their reactions to subside. I simply nodded, turned on my heel, and walked away toward the gate. The last thing I heard was someone whispering, "Wait, what did he say?" I had no intention of staying for what happened next. As I walked down the gravel road to my car, I could feel the stairs piercing my back like heat bulbs. I did not turn around. I did not need to. I had played my part. I had spoken everything I needed to say, and I knew that small mic drop moment would reverberate throughout the gathering like a pebble on still water. The fact is, I hadn't planned on saying anything. I actually hadn't. However, years of being the family's quiet afterthought, the one who got the short end of the talk and the long list of favors, had finally added up. And Sophia's arrogant little jab, that was the last straw. When I got into my car and drove away, no one came after me. Not yet. But by the time I arrived home, parked in front of my stylish 3-bedroom house which I purchased outright last year, my phone had already started buzzing. First came the texts, one from my mother. That was uncalled for. Aiden, you embarrassed the entire family. Then another, we'll chat later. Please do not make a big deal out of it. Then Aunt Cara asked, was that really necessary? Sophia worked hard to earn her degree. You are not the only one having accomplishments. I didn't respond. I turned off my phone, dropped it on the kitchen counter, and let the silence of my home wash over me. That night, I got the best sleep I'd had in months. The aftermath occurred in waves over the next 2 days. Monday morning, I opened my business email and discovered 3 fresh interview requests. Apparently, one of Sophia's friends looked up my company after the party and was really happy with what we'd built. Not fallen into. This isn't some minor online activity. That word meant something to me. A month ago, I might have forwarded the inquiries to my assistant. What about now? I took the calls myself. For once, I wanted others to hear my story. Tuesday evening, my mother arrived at my door. She didn't text me first. She just rang the doorbell, clutching a Tupperware container. As if it was still 2006 and I was a college student in need of lasagna and life counsel. I opened the door slowly. Hey, she said a little too quietly. I brought dinner. I stepped back and motioned her in. She hovered in the entrance, surveying the living room as if it were the first time she'd seen it. The minimalist furniture, local art pieces, and smart lighting. All of it screamed success in a language she had never bothered to understand. You've done well for yourself, she finally replied. Yeah, I replied. I have. She placed the Tupperware on the countertop. You embarrassed Sophia and the entire family. She is devastated. I folded my arms and leaned on the kitchen island. Mom, she mocked me in public. I did not start anything. I finished it. But $1.2 million. She stated it like it was a sin, as if saying it aloud would call an IRS demon. It's the truth. She stopped, her jaw stiff. Why haven't you told me? I laughed, not unkindly. I did. You simply never wanted to hear it. You like the version of myself that needed assistance. That fits into your tiny story. Aiden, the dropout, is still trying to figure things out. You could pity me, but I stopped needing it a long time ago. She sat down hard as if my words had knocked the wind out of her. I wasn't trying to pity you, she added quietly. No? I asked. So why was Sophia always so motivated while I was just the kid who made stickers in his room? She did not have an explanation for that. Instead, she explained, Sophia is looking for work, you know? Nothing has come through yet. I grinned tightly. So, the actual degree didn't open every door after all? That earned me a scowl. Don't be cruel. I am not. I'm just tired of pretending. I have not earned a place in this household. She stood up and brushed phantom crumbs from her blouse. She wants to apologize, she muttered. Does she? I raised an eyebrow. She said she went too far. I did not respond since I didn't believe it. Not yet. Later that night, I looked at my phone for the first time since Saturday. Sophia's text sat unread. Hey, about the party. I shouldn't have said what I said. That was messed up. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't know what to do, but because the power dynamic had shifted and everyone knew it. For years, they assumed I was the man scraping by on Wi-Fi in a dream. No, I was the one who developed an empire while they weren't looking. The following weekend, however, was when things really began to spin out of control. Aunt Cara called me directly. There was no warning, just a voicemail. Aiden, I need to talk to you about something important. We've run into a bit of a financial situation. I didn't want to bring this up, but your uncle's hours got cut, and the lease on Sophia's new car isn't exactly manageable. I know things got tense, but we're still family, right? That's when something clicked. They weren't simply humiliated. They wanted something. I listened to the voicemail twice, not because I wanted to hear what she said again, but because I couldn't believe how quickly the tone changed. Just days before, I'd been the family joke in a vest directing automobiles into grassy areas. Now I was the emergency exit. I did not call Aunt Cara back right away. I didn't even respond. I let it rest, leaving her to wonder if I had heard it. Allow the discomfort to increase. I recognized this pattern. It was predictable. First the derision, then the stillness, then the sudden tenderness, and the "we're still family" line. As soon as they needed a favor, and make no mistake, this was a favor, a pricey one, I sat down at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and went to Sophia's Instagram. She'd shared a carousel of photos from the party, including the banner, speeches, and the keys to her new automobile with a comment. To new beginnings and real work that makes a difference. Right? Real work. That phrase again. I browsed through the comments and saw dozens of likes from extended family, acquaintances, and former classmates. A handful of them tagged her and expressed how amazing she was. One of them even said, "Can't wait to work with you at the embassy." That made me smirk. I knew Sophia hadn't received a single job offer, not because she told me, but because my mother had accidentally let it slip while half defending her in my kitchen. The girl who toasted to genuine degrees and derided internet hobbies was now 3 months into post-graduation unemployment and plainly stressed out. Still, I had no plans to do anything. I wasn't looking for blood. Not yet. Then came the second call. This one came from my uncle. "Aiden, hello? I just wanted to clarify the air. You know we love you. Always have. What about the whole party thing? Just a little playful taunting. Sophia has a great sense of humor, doesn't she? She takes after her father." He grinned nervously. "Cara mentioned the lease and left you a message. We're simply a touch tight this month. It would be very appreciated if you could float us the first few installments to keep things running smoothly while Sophia settles in. I mean, you did say your business was going great, right?" I sat there in startled stillness, clutching my phone like a live grenade. The arrogance was nearly artistic. There was no mention of the years I had spent quietly footing costs for birthday gifts, Christmas feasts, or family emergencies while they offered me folding chairs and backhanded compliments. There was not a single acknowledgement that Sophia's words were cruel. Not mocking, humorous, or a joke. No apologies, just more entitlement, simply more of the same. That's when I opened the spreadsheet I'd saved for years. Not excessively, just be methodical. Every dollar I'd ever given or spent on this family. From the $300 I loaned Jason for textbooks, which he never paid back, to the $2,000 I lent Cara and her husband when their roof began leaking 2 winters ago. I had been guilted into doing every favor. I paid every bill quietly to keep the peace. What is the grand total? $42,860. $42,860, not including interest, not including emotional labor. Not to mention the way they made me feel like a glorified piggy bank with no actual accomplishments. I looked at the number for a long time. Then I took a big breath and began crafting a note for Sophia. "Hey, got your text. Been thinking about it. Appreciate the apology, but I've been thinking maybe it's time for some clarity for everyone's sake. You're right, by the way. You did work hard. I just don't think that justifies mocking other people's success, especially when you don't fully understand it. But more than that, I'm realizing that I've spent years investing in this family financially and emotionally, and all I've gotten in return is dismissiveness." I read it twice. No venom. There is no gloating. It's just a line in the sand. Then I forwarded a variation of that communication to my uncle, aunt, and more delicately, my mother. She called right away. "Aiden, can we discuss this? You cannot just—" "Yes," I interrupted calmly and clearly. "I can." And I just did. There was a pause at the other end of the line. For the first time, she did not have a script. I didn't know what to say. "Did you really earn more than $1 million last year?" "Yes." "How?" "You never asked." Another prolonged stillness. "What do you want us to do?" she asked, her voice low. And that question stayed with me for a moment. Because that was the point, wasn't it? I did not want them to do anything. I just wanted them to stop expecting me to handle everything. I abruptly ended the call. Not out of spite, but because I didn't feel obligated to perform for anyone. The mask was off. The bank was closed. The family's joke had finally been told. Sophia had not responded to my mail for 2 days. I assumed she was either stewing, preparing a faux gracious response, or too humiliated to say anything at all. I honestly didn't care. I had spoken my piece. The weight that had been resting on my chest for years, guilt, obligation, the continual sense of being seen but never valued, was finally lifted. For the first time in forever, I felt light. Then, on the 3rd day, I received a calendar invitation. Subject: Coffee by Sophia Summers. Time: Saturday at 10 a.m. Cafe Alder, located downtown. I stared at it for a moment, trying to decide whether to decline. But a part of me was curious. I accepted, not because I expected a heartfelt apology, but because I wanted to see her in the eyes and discover what, if anything, was genuine beneath all of her polished superiority. Saturday morning rolled around. It was gray and rainy. I thought it was fitting. I arrived 10 minutes early and got a black coffee with no frills or distractions. She arrived 5 minutes late, dressed in a cream blazer, heels, and a countenance full of well-managed humility. Even amid the rain, Sophia dressed as if she expected to be in the spotlight. "Aiden," she murmured with a little smile as she took the seat across from me. "Thank you for coming. I didn't expect you to show," I said quietly. "Neither did I," she said. "But here we are." We sat in silence for a beat. She stirred her cappuccino as if it were an art project. "I read your message," she finally replied. "Twice." "Okay. And you're right." I raised an eyebrow. "I was awful," she said. "Not only at the party, for years. I made fun of your work because I didn't comprehend it. And to be honest, I was jealous. This caught me by surprise." "Jealous?" I echoed. "Yeah," she replied, not meeting my gaze. "You found your thing. You made it work. Meanwhile, I am sitting here with a shiny degree, no job prospects, and a car that my parents cannot afford." The joke I told at the party? It was less about you and more about me trying to feel better about my situation. I waited for her words to settle. I did not rush to forgive. I wasn't sure if I wanted to. "I appreciate you saying that," I said slowly and deliberately. "But that won't undo years of jabs, of being treated as if I were less than by everyone, including my own mother." "I know," she whispered. "That is on me and they, all of us." I nodded. My gaze locked on the rain pouring down the window beside us. "Why did you actually ask me here, Sophia?" She bit her lip. "Not for money. I swear." "Good. Because the door is closed." She nodded swiftly. "I understand. I did not come to ask for help. I just wanted to own it. Publicly." I looked at her, puzzled. Publicly? That was when she dug into her bag and took out her phone. She opened her Instagram app, turned the device toward me, and pressed the record button on a story. "Hi, everyone," she said nervously, smiling into the camera. "So, this is a little uncomfortable, but it's time I say something." I sat frozen as she kept recording. "At my graduation celebration last week, I made a disparaging remark about online firms and those who work outside of the established system. It was petty, harsh, and absolutely inaccurate. My cousin Aiden is one of the most determined and successful individuals I know. He started his firm from scratch with no handouts or shortcuts, and I publicly mocked him for it. That is my fault, and I apologize not only to him, but to everyone I impacted with that attitude. Real success does not come with a diploma. It requires work. And Aiden, if you're watching, thank you for calling me out. I needed it." She paused the video, posted it without hesitation, and returned the phone to her purse. I blinked. It was unexpected. She shrugged. "I deserve to feel embarrassed. You were for years. It is only fair." For the first time in a long time, I saw her not as Sophia the Golden Girl, but as a young lady attempting to detangle herself from the image her family had created for her and possibly from the one she had created for herself. "You're lucky I'm not a petty man," I added with a tiny smile. She smirked. "Don't push it." We talked for another hour, but not about money, careers, or family politics, just about life, travel, books. We never shared the tiny things because we were always competing or avoiding each other. When we eventually rose up to leave, she hugged me. Not just a slap on the back, but a genuine hug, a peaceful one. The type that says, "I understand now." A week later, my mother called. "Did you see the video?" she asked hesitantly. I did. She didn't even tell us she was posting it. She didn't need to. "I'm proud of you," she murmured, her voice thick with a hint of remorse. "And I apologize for how I discussed your work, for not listening, for not asking." I did not gloat. I did not say anything. I simply said, "Thank you." The next family gathering occurred a month later. Uncle Rob had a 4th of July barbecue. I showed up in jeans and a polo as usual, but this time I wasn't handed a vest or asked to service the ice machine. Instead, Sophia strolled up, handed me a plate full of food, and said, "You're sitting with me." So I did. There was no speech, no banner, no toast. Just laughs, stories, and a strange sense of equilibrium I hadn't had in years. When someone inquired what I did for a living, Sophia was the first to respond. "He manages a multi-million-dollar web brand. It's absolutely insane. You should see his setup." The silence that followed was lovely. No snorting, no smirking, simply impressed nods and follow-up questions. I responded to a couple, smiled nicely, and kept the rest to myself because they wanted to know, and I didn't need them to. The Kia was finally returned. Sophia began working for a nonprofit organization, doing actual work that was important to her, not her parents. Aunt Cara and Uncle Rob have stopped calling me for handouts. My mother still doesn't understand what I do, but she now brags about me as if I invented the internet. I still have that spreadsheet, not out of bitterness, but as a reminder of where I came from and what I no longer owe. They say that prosperity is the best form of vengeance. I believe that greater clarity is preferable. After all that noise, stillness is the loveliest sound. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.